Jeremy, do not.
Okay. But they can eat some. Yeah. You have 4 now. All right, we're gonna call this Senate to order. We'll start with roll. Senate will come to order. We'll start with roll. Senator Christopher. Senator Henry. Senator Hayashi. Here. Senator Klein. Senator Rodriguez. Senator Newlander.
Here.
Senator Max Robbins. Senator Ward.
Here.
Senator Abisakara. Senator Sellinger.
Here.
Senator Stoney.
Here.
Senator Stillwell.
Here.
Senator Morrow. Senator Butler. Senator Menashe.
Here by proxy.
Senator Jacob Robbins. Here. All right. Quorum is met. We'll move to the adoption of the agenda. Any changes to the agenda? Katie?
Can we move up the KP presentation just one spot?
Just one
So like before founders.
before now. Okay. All right, any more changes to the agenda? All right, seeing no changes, the agenda is adopted. Moving to the adoption of the minutes, any changes to the 19th meeting minutes? All right, seeing none, they're adopted. Moving to public comment, any member of the public wishing to speak at this time? Seeing no public, we'll move to reports from the officers, first to President Chen.
Hello, everyone. So I just have 3 quick things today. I don't have like a fancy PowerPoint or anything. But the first thing is, if you are currently a senator, you should have gotten an email from Chanel, the Director of Executive Board Accountability, about filling out a survey. The survey literally takes, I'm not kidding, less than 1 minute. Like you could do it probably in 10 seconds if you could just go. Has anyone filled out the survey already? Okay, awesome. So can we just take 2 minutes right now? And if you haven't filled out the survey, could you please do it right now?
What email would I go to?
In your AUSG email.
Oh,
from
your
Chanel.
AUSG. I go to the Senate at AUSG.org.
So the purpose of the survey is basically, I was like, should I let Chanel talk? But I don't think that she has speaking rights, right? Can she talk or no? No. Okay.
Someone can grant or speak, right? Someone can grant or speak, right?
No, go for it.
Yeah.
This is reports. This is reports.
Yeah.
Motions can't be made during.
Yeah.
But any other time,
Yes,
yeah.
I see what you are saying. So Chanel sent out surveys independently to 3 separate groups. So one to the programming directors, so Kevin and Colin, you should have gotten them. Please fill it out. Haha. Awesome, love it. Love to see it. One to all the senators, which is what you're filling out right now, and then one to like AUSG at large. So that would be people like Alex, who hopefully will be reconfirmed to be in J board. And as you can see from the questions, it's just generally about like the productivity of Senate, our productivity at e-board. How do you feel like we're connecting with the Senate? And hopefully this will be useful going into the new Senate, so we know how to better serve as an e-board. The results are not going to be shown to us. The only people who have access to this, the only person who has access to the survey is Chanel. And she's not going to be showing us like directly what you say. Like she's going to be making a report for us, like generally what the data was and what comments you have. So hopefully you can be honest. If you feel like we're doing a garbage job, let us know and we'll try to do less of a garbage job. But while you guys are doing that, the 2 other updates I have are, one, on Monday, if anyone's running for re-election or if you just want to come and say hi, Chanel is also kind of hosting with like from her position, a AUSG leadership mixer. So there's going to be Panera catering, and we're going to kind of be talking about like our initiatives and what we've been up to. It is definitely like geared towards like people who are running for Senate, so they can know like what the e-board is up to before they like hypothetically take their positions. But like anyone can come. It should be a fun time. We'll be there. Good stuff. And then also I just wanted to introduce. So I appointed a parliamentarian. So Brian, you don't have to do it anymore. Awesome.
It has to get approved by Senate.
Oh, is it really?
So not quite.
Okay, well, so can I? This one I want to know before you guys. Can I add it right now or no?
Well,
Why does it need to be appointed? Why does it need to be
it's
proposed?
in the Constitution.
She's not getting paid.
It's in the Constitution.
Okay, so she'll be here next time. Martina is here right now.
Sorry.
But I'm gonna be recommending a nominee for parliamentarian. I would hope that you guys confirm her. That would be great. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, always reach out. Please fill out the survey. Okay, that's it. Bye, guys.
All right, questions for the president? All right, seeing no questions, thanks, Angela. We'll move now to the report from Comptroller Zitzman.
Everybody, I don't have a lot today, but there is on the agenda today a directive to move $1,000 from SG General to DOPAR. So I want to talk a little bit about that so you all know what's going on. Big picture is that the Senate controls the funds of student government, and it assigns them all to different purposes every year when it creates the annual budget. SG General is one of those accounts that's just used for things that aren't accounted for by another account, and DOPAR is the secretary's account. So anything that's the responsibility of the secretary, including promotion and merchandise, if there's money that's needed for that, that comes out of DOPAR. Also, some background information is that you can't spend money out of one account if there's another account for that purpose. Like Mulan, the vice president, has an account, but James, the secretary, could not use Mulan's money to pay for things that are the responsibility of the secretary. So with all that in mind, the directive that's on the agenda today that Curtis is sponsoring is because James would like an extra $1,000 for merchandise to go along with the rebranding of student government that he is spearheading. So that is up to you guys whether to decide to move that $1,000 into his account, in which case he would have more money to spend on merchandise. I'm neutral on the contents of it. I'm here to provide background information to you all so that you understand the process and the budget and all that. Some background information. SG General and DOPAR both started, their budget this year was $3,000 each. SG General, we've spent just about $500, and that means we have about $2,500 remaining. So if you guys transferred $1,000 out of it to DOPAR, obviously there would be about $1,500 remaining. DOPAR again started with $3,000, has spent about $1,000. So that if you guys don't do this, James would have $2,000 to spend on merchandise. If you do, you would have about $3,000 to spend on merchandise, or you could do a different amount of money. It's a directive, so you don't need to send it through committee. You have that option, but it's just by default one reading before the Senate. Yeah, that's that. If you have any questions, you can ask them to me now about this or any other thing that I'm responsible for, and I can also talk about it more when we get to the consideration of it.
Questions for the comptroller? Seeing no questions, thanks, Bobby. We'll move now to the report from Sheriff.
Hi, everybody. I've really made a lot of madness today with the parliamentarian thing and the proxy thing, and so sorry. I don't have a whole lot. I really don't have anything to talk about. The only thing is that the parliamentary notice ruling thing I made about the four executives not being able to do proxies, in addition to the chief of staff, me, or the parliamentarian, and the residence hall association president, that was just done in an email, so somewhat informally, but I realized that I do have to write that up because past parliamentary rulings is listed as a governing document of the Constitution, so it would be better to kind of put that in the document, make it more official, so I'll be issuing that later today. I haven't received anything about elections complaints so far, which is a little surprising, but I'm not going to question it. But yeah, so I really just put this report in case any of you have questions.
Questions for the chair? Seeing none, thanks, Ron. All right, now moving to Vice President Burgess.
All right, perfect. I'm going to read off a statement from Sarah, who won't be able to make it to Senate meetings because of work obligations. And then I'll update you with things that David is working on. As you know, Battle of the Bands is happening right now, so that's why he can't be here. And then I'll also update you. So for Sarah, she said, dear members of the 19th Undergraduate Senate, with great excitement that I report to you all on the affairs of the American University Student Government Women's Initiative. Over the past few months, myself and the Women's Initiative team have been working diligently to execute high-quality programming and creative projects for the campus community. We start off this semester with our annual welcome event, Why Give I, on September 10th. At this event, we discuss our upcoming programming, introduce our executive board, and showcase some of our creative projects, such as our publication Elbow Room and the Break Ground monologues. The event was a success, and we had around 40 attendees. On September 24th, Women's Initiative, in partnership with KPU, AU, NAACP, the Women's in Politics Institute, Sister AU, and Black Girls Vote AU, welcomed Congresswoman Alma Adams to campus for a speaking engagement on the topic of Black women's maternal health. The Congresswoman spoke about the Black maternal health crisis she co-founded in the 116th Congress with Congresswoman Lauren Underwood. Congresswoman Adams is the first congressperson that Women's Initiative has welcomed to AU's campus in the past 5 years, which we feel is a great accomplishment. We are pleased to have collaborated with several student organizations and Women's Politics Institute to make this event possible. During the month of September, Women's Initiative released edition 4 of our online publication Algorithm, which featured visual art and creative writing pieces on topics such as racial identity, body image, and abortion. And then I'll also send over the link to Sean that you guys can see if you haven't already seen their online publication. October is undeniably Women's Initiative busiest time of the year as we prepare for Domestic Violence Awareness Month and LGBTQ History Month. On October 10th, Women's Initiative partnered with the Health Promotion Advocacy Center, HPAC, for a discussion about love languages and healthy relationships. On October 10th, Women's Initiative will collaborate with the Center for Diversity and Inclusion, AU Pride and Visible for an LGBTQ History Month event. And then also during the month of October, they just hosted 2 informational sessions with Break Ground monologues and then also Know Your Rights Clinic with HPAC. So far, they've had a busy and eventful semester. And they also have a team that is excited to carry out the remainder of their fall programming as well as finalize their spring programming calendar by November 1st. Also, Women's Initiative is always open to feedback from the Undergraduate Senate on the work that we do. And please don't hesitate to reach out to her with any questions or concerns. With Women's Initiative Love, Sarah Duvall. And then to update y'all on what Sub is doing, as you know, he's currently at Battle of the Bands, which is a competition between primarily local bands. And then we have one person from our school that's performing in Battle of the Bands today. So they already have started to ramp up their programming for the next semester. January, they already booked the comedy show that will be coming to campus. February, they already sent the offer out for Subsession 2 that artist will be. And then for April, AmFest, they already have the main headliner booked. So far, David said that he's just excited for the people that they booked. And he already sees them getting good press, and then even some of them might be coming out with new albums as well from now until when they show up next semester. Things that I'm working on, I remember reporting to y'all about the DMV mixer that I want to do, student government mixer. I'm deciding to push that back for the spring semester, and I've chatted with student government leaders from other universities, just letting them know that it makes sense for us to wait till next semester because we only would have been serving in all of our respective roles for almost 2 months, and we probably wouldn't be able to get much things done to be able to talk about it. But instead of it being a mixer, I'm going to be going with myself and other executives. November 9th to GMU, they'll be hosting their fall DMV Student Government Summit, and I'm going to pitch to have the spring DMV Summit be held here at American University. Last spring it was held at GW, this fall be held at George Mason. And then for the Student Leadership Roundtable, which is kind of like me just talking to the other student government organizations on campus, RHA, AUCC, and AU Media Board. I already finalized the date for that, which will be Wednesday, November 13th from 6 to 8 p.m. In MGC, and then I'll have catered dinner for all of those student leaders on campus. Any questions about that so far? I know I went by very quickly. All right. So, yeah.
A question about sub.
Yes.
Or sub in general. Okay, first, Battle of the Bands. How did you promote Battle of the Bands to AU students? Because you said only one AU student performing Battle of the Bands. And I believe that student's her name is Kiki.
Yes, right? Yeah.
So I was just wondering, what did sub do to promote AU students, AU bands, to participate in Battle of the Bands?
So similarly, they sent out a kind of like or kind of like any bands to really like kind of like fill out. So that can just be whether they're in DCI or also AU. And that was out for about like 2.5 weeks that they had that kind of like link that they can fill out. They actually had about like 30 responses. So I don't know if it's necessarily the bands that AU didn't like submit to perform, but it's also out of 30 people, they probably as a sub team chose not to have them.
And I asked that because the student region board last year, September 22nd, I have the email of 2018, sent out an email calling all performers at school for battle bands, an invitation that all AU students received regarding, I guess the link. So I guess how is the link shared to AU students?
Well, I mean, I would refer to your boss, Jace. He doesn't really send out much emails that would promote that to students. We kind of get like those one gigantic monthly emails. So I think also it's like someone there and had to promote on their social media channels because that couldn't happen to all students.
Right, because I did see it on social media. I feel like, yes, I will coordinate that. Thank you for letting me know.
Of course. And then my last kind of thing is more just like Senate etiquette. And I don't want to be kind of like rude about this, but at the end of the day, my role as vice president is to do all event programming and kind of to oversee that for student government. So if there's any time that a senator wants to speak with one of my directors, in no way should you be like emailing them and not CCing me on it. In no way should you be bombarding them in the hallways of MGC, asking them questions about their role, because at the end of the day, we are students first and then student government leaders second. So my biggest thing is like, if you have an issue with my programmers, whether it's them coming to speak at Senate or just anything of what their job is, just refer to me and I can delegate that and make sure that they come and make it. As you see, 2 of my directors are here. One of them has job obligations and one has an event that's happening. But if that wasn't the case, they all would have been here to report to y'all this Sunday. So those members of student government know who they are, but just keep me aware of those things, because at the end of the day, I'm the one that liaisons between what they do and what programming we do for student government, and even executive board, and also what this Undergraduate Senate body does, especially since I've also served as a senator before, an elected senator before, so I understand the work they all do, and I appreciate it and applaud it, but just, I respect the work that you do, just respect the work that I do and what my team does.
All right, questions from the vice president? Seeing none, thanks a lot. We'll move now to KPU Director Martin.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Sean. How's everyone today? Wow. But yeah, okay. So I just want to talk a little bit about what KPU's been up to, just kind of as a general presentation, what we've been working on. And then also, I know there was a couple questions about how we manage our finances and things like that. So I did bring 2 of people from my team with me, because KPU has a pretty, we have a very standardized process. Basically there's multiple eyes who will see something going through before any student money is actually spent, which is the goal, that it's just not just any individual person spending however much they want. I definitely do take pride in having a process laid out to ensure that we are spending student money in the best way possible. So I'll get to that in just a second. But last time I presented, it was, I believe, the 2nd or 3rd week of September. And so since then, we have partnered with Women's Initiative for Alma Adams. That's something Mulan talked about, the co-founder of the Black Maternal Health Caucus. And then the day after, we partnered with PRSSA, which is Public Relations Student Society of America, and they have an annual DC Icon Award. And so that was a co-sponsorship, a good opportunity for KPU to interact with, various student organizations that, while we can do events internally, we, do exist so that we are serving as many parts of the population as possible. And that was an area that I saw we hadn't had too many partnerships with in previous years. So I think that was a great collaboration. We talked a lot about local DC issues, which is something that KPU doesn't focus on too often. I think is important. There's definitely a lot of student interest in what's going on in local politics and like the DC Council, and like housing issues or education issues and DC statehood were talked about at that event. So I think that was really neat and definitely very timely. It was like a couple days after the big like House statehood hearing. So that was really neat. And then the day after we had Dream Hampton, who is Times 2019 top 100 most influential, and she is a big like Hollywood producer and activist in intersectional feminism. And so she was a main producer of Surviving R. Kelly, the docuseries that exposed a lot of sexual abuse in like by R. Kelly, but also kind of exposed the industry as a whole and how it's more systemic and things like that. So I think that was a really quality event. And then the next week we had Chuck Todd, and that was with the School of Communication we partnered with for that one. And I think that we'll talk a little bit about that more in a second, because that's a good case study for how we try to not spend student money where possible, because I would much rather not spend it than spend it. So I'll talk about how we go about doing that. And then after that, now for people tracking this, we're on October 17th, which was the Larissa Gerstel Symposium, School of Education. And that's basically to highlight social activism somewhere in education. So last year was the Parkland student activists, and we kind of agreed it doesn't have to be a massive like vendor event. Again, this year just kind of like worked out last year. So this is only the second year that KPU's in that partnership. And so we had Angela Rye and Bakari Sellers, who are activists, change makers in their own right. They contribute to a CNN panel. Bakari has, he's been in politics from a very early point in his life in South Carolina, advocating for various, like we talked a lot about education because it was with the School of Education, and also WCL was on that as well. So, I mean, if you made it out, you definitely know. If not, it was live streamed, which was, something that we don't always do, but there are a lot of students who are part of the School of Education, but are online students. So we did want to give them the opportunity, and we had that closed caption and everything like that. So here we are today on the 20th, and this upcoming Wednesday, we have the Democratic whip in the House, Congressman Clyburn, who will be coming to talk about issues in the Democratic Party and how he's kind of, from a leadership position, the Democratic Party as he sees it. And also, there's, of course, impeachment going on and all these, so many different things to talk about. So that's Wednesday at 7. Okay, so I'm just going to punctuate that and pivot a little bit to finances and why we spend our money where. And so, we do, as I mentioned, we have a set process in place with multiple people looking at orders before any orders are placed. And that's just to make sure that, what we're doing is actually necessary, what we're doing actually benefits students, and everything like that. And so Jordan Bell on my team, he's our financial coordinator. He's actually out of town this weekend for a wedding. So he can't come, but I can definitely speak to questions as to his position. But I did bring Shadi and Chanel from my team, who, they're basically detailed. Shadi does a lot of external relations type stuff, and Chanel brings or does a lot of internal management stuff. So they can talk about, benefits of making purchases, whether it be like various merchandise. I know you guys all know we bought quarter zips, and I'm happy you guys know that we bought them, because that means that they're working. We do want people to be seeing that logo. We do want people to be wearing them, because that contributes a lot to why we even have them in the first place. It's not necessarily just like a handout to people on our staff. There's kind of like, there's a little bit of a calculus behind it, and increasing our brand recognition, because we are now on our 51st year. And so we do have to kind of hold ourselves to a high standard, as a serious organization that can do a job very well, because our reputation basically is everything. That's how I argue, save money, because, for example, Chuck Todd, he was
free because we had this relationship built up and that we were able to leverage that. The person we worked with trusted us to use basically her connections at NBC Universal. And that was, it's really important to manage those sorts of relationships. The alternative would be to pay around, I'm not going to be like specific, but around like $25,000. So, for me, if we can spend a little bit of money to actively engage some of our like strategic partners, and it's kind of like, it's not like being like a slimy like swamp rat or whatever, but it's like, you have to, but you have to be engaging various like serious people in the right way for them to take us seriously, because we are student run. Most like KPUs at various universities aren't student run. And so we have to perform that much better because they are expecting a certain thing of us. And so I'll shut up. But I want to turn to Chanel first, who can talk about, the internal process and various things that merchandise. I think that's where the issue was, where people had questions there. And feel free to like hop in.
She needs speaking rights.
What's that?
Well, actually, no, it's report.
So the rules say that they need to be listed in the agenda. As a report. She can grant it.
And we adopted the agenda already.
So we can do that. Can you deal with
What
time?
rule says that she has to be in the agenda?
It's in the rules of debate. I mean, I can pull it up.
Just so,
Is that in the Constitution?
I have another question. Could we just suspend the rules then?
Wow.
I know.
You know what I did interpret this. She has speaking rights. She can take it wherever she wants. She can talk.
Okay.
I'm good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Hi, everyone. So I'm deputy of internal management, so I do oversee the internal affairs of the organization and get to kind of oversee the internal motivations and attitudes towards KPU. And so Shadi will get into more external things that Kevin alluded to a little bit, but specifically on internal. As you guys know, we have, or you may not know, we have a staff of about 21 people, and they do a lot of really great work for us. And a really good thing about having things like merchandise and having quarter zips and things that we can use to show and proudly represent our organization helps build a lot of motivation community within our organization. And in that way, it translates to more valuable and productive work within our organization itself. And that comes in different capacities. So outreach, communications, day of event executions, having that team dynamic solidified is really important in the way that we conduct ourselves during events, before events, and after events. And then it also translates into how we operate externally as well. In addition, as you all know, the majority of our staff is not stipend or paid. We have 4 deputies who are stipend. They get about $400, but even in that sense, I'll use our production deputy as an example. He gets paid his $400, but he's negotiating thousands of dollars in contracts and liabilities of over $1 million. So having said that, the discrepancy is clearly evident and it's represented. So it's important that we're making sure that we know and translate to our team that they are valued through ways such as merchandise and giving back to them in that sense. In addition, with the majority of our staff not being stipend, that gives us about 17 people, 2 on leadership as well. They're the ones really fueling and structuring KPU and allowing us to function the way that we do. They're building the foundation for our organization, and they're not the ones who are getting their faces broadcasted everywhere, and certainly not the ones getting financial stipends behind it. So this is really for them and thanking them for their work and making sure that they feel valued within our organization. And as a whole, again, that allows us to operate and make sure that we're serving the student body in the best way that we can.
And then, hi, I'm Shadi. I'm the development coordinator for KPU. So on the external side, the majority of our merchandise purchases aren't going to the staff. Like Kevin was saying, every speaker who comes, they get a thank you gift, which consists of a variety of the merchandise orders that we have placed, and then the partnerships that we have built, for example, with the School of Communication. Like they'll receive some of those merchandise items like the quarter zip, things of that nature. And it really helps with the brand recognition. Like, for example, last night, one of our staff members was wearing their sweatshirt and somebody stopped them on the metro, an adult asking about KPU and having recognized it from how many events that we've put on that have engaged the AU and DC community. Kevin, I know like a few weeks ago was in a Lyft ride and texted us saying that his Lyft rider was an AU alum and remembered KPU and recognized that and really highlighted and reminisced about all the KPU events he went to. And then another one of our friends was out and about in Admo, and a GW grad student stopped and was like, oh my gosh, what you're doing with KPU is awesome. And like GW hosts a lot of events, but none of them are student run. So in that sense, it's really put a footprint throughout AU and DC that people are now recognizing more and more, and to have something to build those conversations that then lead to more partnerships or opportunities that otherwise wouldn't have happened simply because of a logo recognition. It means a lot in the short and the long term for the organization in that regard.
All right, questions for Chanel, Shadi, or Kevin? Sorry, you can't question. Okay, Jeremy.
A couple of weeks ago, Bobby had gave us a report, and like essentially we were just want to know like as far as like the internal things, how that was helping you all out. So you guys more than gave us the answer to that. So yeah, that's all we were wanting to know as far as like with that internal, how is that helping the body as a whole? Great, thanks. So, yeah.
I'll answer your question.
Further questions? Jacob?
So you don't wear the quarter zips at events, do you?
It depends on the level of formality. They took a while to be made. And so for like a business casual that could fly or something like that, like we do plan on wearing them at events. But for some instances, it's more appropriate to dress up more than what a quarter zip could do.
Do you mandate that people wear them certain times throughout the day so as to advertise? Because you could just as easily probably do like some kind of digital advertising or something to get the word out. And if you're talking about this being a form of advertising, do you recommend that people wear it out? Do you mandate that they wear it out? Or?
Yeah. So for example, during All American Weekend, that's when we did a little bit of like a PR thing, just because there were a lot of people coming to campus and stuff like that. And so we basically said you wear KPU merchandise. And so basically all of our team was wearing something KPU, just so that's a logo that's visible on campus, because it takes like, it takes a lot of views almost for a campaign like to be successful. People don't pay attention to the logo, but if people like see it multiple times, then it's just so much more successful. Like no one like stares at someone's logo on their shirt, or if you're scrolling on Facebook, you don't like stop and like, oh, like, gee, like, let me analyze this picture for a second. It's just like very quick, like information that's received there's like tons of like studies on how to really do an effective campaign for awareness or brand recognition. And so that's kind of the school of thought that we're drawing from there.
Further questions, Jacob?
It's just that, like $40 a piece for a quarter zip, it's like half of the student activity fee allocation, right? If we each get from each student 50, right? That's like a substantial, would you not agree that that's a substantial amount of the student activity fee that you're using towards like merchandise that only stays within the actual organization?
I think it's an investment. It's something that we expect to see the return on. Like for example, various sweatshirts or something like that. Before my time at AU, I still see them around. Like we see like former staff members and their friends will like wear it or something like that. And so it's definitely something that sticks around. And I think this is just kind of a natural cycle that KPU does. Like we kind of almost like inject merchandise every other year. Last year we didn't do too much merchandise because the year before we got a bunch of new stuff. We got like travel mugs for windbreakers and stuff like that, because that was already around, and now it's kind of over a couple of years it starts to be seen less and less. And while the actual product is still around, it's not serving as much as its original purpose. So it's going to be around for longer than this year. Like our fellows, they got their quarters at, and they're probably going to be continuing in KPU for 3 to 4 more years, so they won't need another one. And so it's a long-term investment, and it's something that we didn't get just 21 quarter zips for the staff. We got 30 or 35 so that we can gift them to people who are strategic partners of ours, various like former directors and staff who really are still like really invested in KPU, but just need to kind of be brought into the fold somehow. People who like really help us out as an organization and who are interacting regularly with board members or alumni, and something that it's just to have in that concrete institutional support is something that's very necessary in my view.
Some other organizations on campus, when they purchase merchandise for their members, will ask for the members to put in money for like a quarter zip or a T-shirt. So why did you realize that tact was not the best tact for this?
Yeah, there's no way I'm gonna do that. I just wouldn't feel comfortable doing that because our staff members are, they're quite frankly very almost to the point of being overworked as is, and so they already pour some of their money, their personal money, into making last minute purchases for events or something like that. And so I'm not going to be asking them again to buy a quarter zip when like it's more likely if you walk into the KPU office on a Friday or Saturday night that people are in there working. It's something that I just wouldn't feel comfortable doing because of how much time they each put in, upwards 15, 20 hours a week of uncompensated pay or uncompensated work when they're, as I mentioned already, a lot of times making purchases last minute that benefits KPO.
Kevin, how much is your stipend?
$4,000.
$4,000. And you said in your answer that your KPU staff members, first year fellows or whoever is overworked. Does that mean, I don't know. So what do you mean by overworked? Are you overworking your staff?
No, I'm not overworking my staff, but they're voluntarily committing 15 to 20 hours. And so to Jacob's point that making that comparison to other organizations, I don't think other organizations necessarily put 15 to 20 hours in per week, every single week. And if someone's leading an event, that's, even more time. So that's all I meant by that. It's just to show the commitment that people have to KPU.
So, I know, Mulan, he does his job well. He puts in a lot of work. And, just I guess as a comparison, why can KPU buy quarter zips for its members? Sure, for PR. And the executive board members cannot buy quarter zips for e-board, or let's say WI. WI doesn't buy quarter zips. Maybe it's because they don't have enough money in their budget. Why cannot the AUSG Undergraduate Senate buy quarter zips for us so we can, promote our events?
I think they can. WI bought merchandise last year very similar to KPU did this year.
Okay, so I guess, Mr. Speaker, my question would be, why does KPU have the special privilege of buying quarter zips for their staff?
I think, well, that's the US
I'm
House.
not in a position to answer that. I would refer you to.
I mean,
the director.
I can, like, when we allocate money to a group, they can feasibly spend that money, like, on whatever it is they'd like to spend, as long as they justify, as long as there's a paper trail, right, and they're not just taking that money and running with it, right? Like, there's things, right, there's actual steps that they have to go through to document the spending of that money, so there's not like restrictions per se on like what they can buy. It's just that they have to document it, and it's up to them to determine what is a good investment of that money, and if they think that spending money on something is on a certain item, right, or a certain thing will be good for them, right, then they have the right to do that, it's just that they have to document it. There's not restrictions. I say that there's, does Ayana actually don't answer that.
Yeah,
Other
there's
than that,
there's
you
also
have
the
to-
extra layer that it has to be.
Yeah, that's what it's all, that would imagine it has to be.
And I'm- and this
Okay,
is-
all right, order.
It has to.
So my question would be who approves it? Because as long as, Mulan signs off on it, Ayana signs off on it, I'm happy. Or whoever you're.
They sign off on it, and then there's probably like 2 or 3 other people who sign
So
off on it.
Ayana and.
Jordan Bell on my team. Then there's also kind of like an internal, like I sign off on it.
Right.
And then also, whether it's to benefit like external relations or internal management or something like that, Shadi and Chanel would be looking at it. So at that point, it's 5 to 6 people signing off on it. Milan, me, Chanel have all been approved by Senate. And so, yes, we are to be held accountable. But, I think that there's a certain level of trust that is placed in us to make sure that we are being the best stewards of student money. And then at the end of the day, CSI can be the final judge of it and can accept or deny requests.
Right, and thank you for just clarifying it, because the way I heard it from, from other students is that KPU just buying quarter zips for itself, and, that just sounds bad, and,
I agree
just,
that would be bad, yeah.
right, and just, coming here to present and, the stories, it's all about the stories about, going into DC and making those connections with former alums and whatnot. That really reassures me. So thank you.
But we can answer your question.
Any further questions for the director? All right, seeing no further questions, thanks Kevin, Sean, and Janelle.
Thank you.
We'll now move to Founders Director of Culture Mayor for his report.
I'm gonna stand. I like to stand. I like to see people. So yeah, for those of you who I don't know yet, my name is Colin. I'm the director of Founders this year. We don't have as many exciting things to share as Kevin and his great team because all of our stuff happens in spring, but I will share with you what I can. Just a quick reminder, because our programming board operates a little differently than the other boards, because we are base budgeted from the Budget Advisory Committee rather than allocated through the Senate and the rest of the boards, and what Jacob did last year and all the effort he put in. So we were given our budget of $135,000 for the ball in the week. It was slightly higher than last year, so that we could put more money towards programming specifically earmarked for the week, not for the ball, in the effort to host more events throughout the week, make Founders Week more accessible to students. So that's how we were budgeted. What that does for us, I think something I've been thinking about a lot recently is the fact that Founders, yes, is organized internally, almost entirely by student government and people who are in our organization, but it's very much more than that, a community event, because right off the bat, we're working with co-sponsors from AU Club Council and Student Media Board because they're a part of that base budgeting process. So we work closely with those organizations for different things that we work on. We also bring in partnerships every year with the Residence Hall Association and with the Graduate Leadership Council, so we're working on those partnerships as well for the year. Those tend to change a little bit more per year depending on the priorities of directors and presidents and things like that, but that's being worked on. We also work closely with some organizations on campus, athletics, obviously for Founders Game Day, but also for some other work we do. The Office of Development and Alumni Relations is a great partner that we work with for a lot of different things, so we've been working with them as well. I wanted to share with you a little bit about, Mulan had all the directors submit a vision plan for the year with some of the our major goals for the work that we do. So I wanted to share a couple of them for me based on my experience on the Founders Committee last year and just what I'd like to see change. My first one was hosting our event at a venue that's metro accessible. I think that was one of the largest pieces of criticism of our event last year was that it wasn't metro accessible. So that's been at the top of my list as I and my team and our advisors have been looking into different places to host the ball. And we're working as hard as we can to make sure that we can host it at a place that's metro accessible, other factors permitting. Another point I said was making sure we're representing even more communities in our programs this year. I think one way we're able to do that is because we have an expanded budget for the week. And to be clear, that is specifically earmarked for the week, so we cannot use that for anything on the ball. It has to be for our events to make sure we're using that money where it's been directed. So having a larger budget, we're able to work with more events or more groups on campus, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And then my third point was building on last year's successes. I think our director last year, Emma, who I got to work closely with, was stellar at her job and left big shoes to fill for me. And one thing that she really worked hard on was creating programs that we can host year to year. Some of our more signature events like Taste the Tropics that Caribbean Circle hosts each year. We're working with their executive board to make sure we can make that event even bigger this year. Last year, it was a fantastic event. We turned away like 50 students because there just wasn't enough space in the room and there wasn't enough food. So we are thinking about things like that and what worked really, really well last year to make sure we are directing our funds and our efforts where it can be. And then growing from last year's learning moments. Each year there are things that happen that we think critically about and figure out ways to improve. So we received feedback last year that we didn't provide for enough dietary restrictions at the ball. So that is something that I'm thinking a lot about as I work with potential caterers to make sure that in the interest of accessibility and inclusion, our event will be able to feed as many people with as many dietary restrictions as possible. So those were my kind of main points that I was thinking about. Some updates about the work that my team and I are working on. Hopefully you saw on social media and through emails, we had our event submission form open for the last few weeks. That closed about a week ago. We had a lot of great submissions from different groups throughout campus, and now we get to work internally on building a week of events that we can host. So we're working on that now. And then we also combine that with some events that we organize internally, like Founders Game Day, which happens every year, things like that. We're really thinking a lot about our programming, making sure we're being intentional with where we're directing our funds and that we're bringing in as many communities as possible. And then I think something that I always need support on is making sure we're spreading the messages that we're putting out. The student government emails and Facebook posts can only go so far, and they go even further when lots of members of our organization share them. So as we get closer to our event and when we launch, one of our best parts of the week is Claude's Warehouse that we've done for the past few years, where we run a clothes drive for formal wear, and then we give that back to students, totally free for students who might not have the financial capabilities to purchase an outfit they'd want to wear to Founders. So we will do a drive about that, around Thanksgiving break and around winter breaks, that if students are able to go home, if they have something they can bring back, we encourage them to do that. So when you see those posts on Facebook, I encourage you to share them, help make this more of a community event by adding your voice to it. Of course, there's a lot of stuff about Founders that's kept really confidential. So obviously there's a lot of stuff I can't talk to you about, but I'm happy to answer questions if you have any confidentiality.
Questions for the director, Curtis?
I guess something for like Founders Day and the events leading up, during Founders Week, etc. And also, I guess a question for Mulan is, I guess, what is the AUSG VP and the several cabinets, the sub cabinets, I guess, KPU sub, WI, Founders. How do they keep track of attendance? Do you use like a Google form, or are you now, migrating to Quark?
I've seen just attending the other events that the other programming boards have been hosting. They're checking everyone in on Quark. So we'll be doing the same thing. Ticketing is usually done on Eventbrite. That's the system that we found to be the best. We're still working internally to see if that's something we can do on Quark, so that we're using that for ticketing for the fall as well. But we're definitely going to be using that for events throughout the week. I think it's been really effective for the programming boards and also for the clubs that I get to work with the club council. So we'll be using that for Founders Week as well.
And to kind of add on to that, for our much larger events that the programming boards we do, we have a conversation every time before the event, right? Specifically when we go into monthly meeting for KPU, and that's if we use either or, but either or we're able to track those events.
Further questions for the director?
So last year, I know had Nicole as like, I guess, a liaison officer between the RHA and student government. Is there some person like that, or are you directly contacting him and the rest of RHA?
Yeah, I actually just had a great meeting with Heyman and Katie Foltz, her advisor, and Ayana about this on Friday. That was a position that was started last year by Emma in the interest of creating a stronger relationship with the Residence Hall Association. So we're not doing it exactly the same way this year, but that is a conversation that we're having with Heyman. And what's probably happening is that a member of her e-board will be sitting in on our meetings and filling that role rather than bringing someone else in. We're still working on some specific logistics about that, but that's something that we're really thinking about, making sure that we are working with them in a way that's beneficial to the residents that they represent and to the students that they represent.
Further questions, Kurt?
And my third and final question would be in regards to asking the RHA for thousands of dollars in regards to, you know, buying enough shuttles to get people to the venue. So I guess what kind of approach are you taking this year in terms of, you know, is RHA gonna front all the money for the buses since it's leaving from a residence hall? Or is, you know, the RHA coordinating with the Founders Day Committee to possibly split the cost like they did last year?
I mean, we're having those conversations right now, so it's really not set in stone. I think my biggest priority is to ensure that none of our co-sponsors think that they are our bank. And I think that's really important for people to understand that anything we do is really intentional. Any partner we bring on because they represent either a cohort that we're making sure we're including, or because we want to bring in their expertise or their experience or whatever that may be. So that's not finalized yet, but conversations are ongoing between me and Eamon and her team. And we are working together to make sure, however things happen in whatever way that they partner with us on Founders Week or the ball or both, that we're doing it in AUSG's best interest, the best interest of the student body, and the Residence Hall Association's best interest and their residents.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you. Any further questions for the director?
Is this public comment?
No. All right, seeing none, thanks, Colin.
Thank you.
Okay, so for my report, the speaker's office has 2 new freshman fellows. So Eliza is one, that's her right there. Jeffrey was unable to make it today, but Jeffrey is also a freshman fellow. So they will be helping us with shadowing the Senate. They'll be shadowing specific senators. They'll be shadowing me. They'll be shadowing our meetings and committee hearings just to kind of get a feel of the Senate, and that should help us obviously in fulfilling our duty to the students. And then that's it for me in terms of reports. Any questions for me? All right, seeing none.
Oh, wait.
Oh.
How many more meetings are you gonna have before the election?
So we'll have one next week, and then depending on the referendum, that will determine how many more meetings the 14th Senate will have. And then any more questions for me? All right, seeing none. Reports from committee. So first to the Standing Committee on Student Rights and Services.
All right. I'll tell you what we did. We went over the case policy book and did not change much. Looked pretty good. But it was sent to everyone, so you can see what we changed. We put it in yellow. What the kind of like the only thing we had an issue with was the training sessions. It just didn't say like when those training sessions needed to be completed. And it's like, well, if they get completed at the end, just out of like requirement, then they're not doing their job. So we put within 4 weeks of each individual hire, just based on what Cassie had said about when they were able to get them done this semester. That seemed like fair. And then instead of like may recuse yourself from handling a case, if you know someone, like you should recuse yourself. Just keep it professional, like, you know. So yeah. That was all that we changed. People have problems with that or questions or anything.
Questions for Piper and Superintendent Services? Bobby?
Yeah, with this should recuse, are you trying to say that like that's a rule, or just you're saying that that would be better, but it's still at the discretion of the case?
God, I guess it's a rule is kind of what we were going for, but then again, who enforces that? But trying to go for more of a rule, like, or just a harder, like, okay, recuse yourself. You know, it's not like you have the option. Well, you always have the option, but you should be doing it. That's how we do it.
Further questions for Piper? I can see that. Thanks, Piper. Okay, now moving. Yes.
I understand that there's a directive that should be on the agenda. I don't know if it's full.
Yeah, it's here.
Oh, it's there. I just have an old
But
PDF.
I would like to move it to be the first item under new business. I understand we already adopted the agenda, but I spoke with Brian. It is possible to have that moved up, and because it concerns finance, and I need to leave very shortly, I would like to have it moved up. So I'd like to motion to move that to be the first item of business.
Is there a second for the motion?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing no discussion, we'll move to vote on the motion. All those in favor of moving Directive 1819-003 to the first order of new business, say yay. And all opposed, say nay. The ayes have it, motion approved. Directive.
It's staying like that for now.
Sean, if you don't mind, just showing up here and go so I can print out the text.
Just send it to both.
My Wi-Fi is not on.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi.
You can pull it up on this one.
So I'll just go to
My laptop. Everyone else's Wi-Fi not working?
My Wi-Fi is not working. Mine is
Okay, yeah, mine's not working.
Yeah.
Mine is
I'm on Ethernet. I can't.
That's it.
So we're talking about
Yeah. Did you send it?
Wow.
Oh,
Your Bluetooth on.
on your laptop.
My little secret still would be a lot worse. I am just. This is great. I've been here 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Last year, that was 2 years ago. The second meeting of the 13th Senate was 6 hours long.
Oh my.
I think I was
Criminal.
Did you order pizza?
What, Brian?
Was there something that 6-hour meeting?
Yeah, that was because we did reports from like everyone, and then we elected all the committee chairs. And
Oh, yeah. It was, I thought it was 7 hours, but it was 6 or 7, it was very long.
Yeah, I would guess like that.
It was still like a
Yeah, that was the first, that was the second meeting after the election.
It was just poorly run.
Wait, was that the last one where you passed?
Yeah.
No, that was the first, the second meeting of the 13th Senate.
You guys were elected all the
All the chairs. That was the first meeting that Trevor presided over, and I think he was just
Oh, yes.
like learning the.
Yeah, yeah, I was just terrible. I went there, but I watched it on live stream, I cut out like an hour and a half, part, and I went back, I was like, oh my
But
god.
we all were doing the center, so we're like, oh, we have to be here.
Yeah.
Sean, I can also share it with you if you're having a hard time.
No, he has one.
Okay. Might I suggest that we like move on with the meeting and then we'll like work on this along the way? Because I know people are
The motion is passed, so we have to.
All right, so I'll start speaking on it. So first, James couldn't be here today due to work conflicts. So first, the Secretary's Cabinet and DOPAR has a smaller budget than the previous AUSG fiscal year. And we are actually going to be saving nearly $800 of our student government money from moving from the old website platform to the new website. So we are saving $800, given that Nation Builder, the website platform, it just didn't work for AUSG. I mean, it works, it's functional, but if you go onto the website, there are folders within folders within folders, and it's very confusing to navigate. Yes, perfect. And James is moving to Squarespace, which is a much more modern website platform builder. And we're asked the Secretary's Cabinet. James asked me for $1,000 to be transferred from SG General to DOPAR, which is the Secretary's fund. So by reducing costs of the website, that means we can spend our money on merchandise to rebrand our organization. And I know, KPU has a strong brand among students and members of the AU community, and we also want to do the same for our AU student government. If you look at our logo, the logo has not been changed for over 10 years. And that I can confirm, you can talk to the previous secretary, Alex Bailey. I've had meetings with him last year, before James was elected, and before James even, considered running for secretary, as a senator of this body, I spoke with Alex Bailey about rebranding efforts of our student government. And, that wasn't the secretary's priority then, but it's the secretary's priority now, and that is what I would like to convey to my fellow senators here today. And finally, it's not wasteful spending, because there are concerns about, spending money on merch, spending money on, personal, personal purchases. Like, for example, the KPU quarter zips, there was, concerns about that, but at the end of the day, it's all for a good cause. It's to rebrand our organization, and also to move forward into a new decade. It's gonna be 2020 when, the new logo, the new website, everything's going to be rebranded. And that's what we're working on in the Secretary's cabinet. So given that it is a rebranding year, and given that merchandise certainly helps, and this is not personal merchandise, of course we're going to wear the shirts and wear the merchandise when we're tabling, but a lot of the merchandise, I'd say over 80% of the merchandise will go to the student body, for the student body to wear at, basketball games during Founders Week. And that is why the AUSG Secretary James Kwan has asked me to present this directive to transfer $1,000 from SG General to the Secretary's Fund before the Senate today. I stand now for any questions.
All right, questions for the sponsor, Jacob?
I just want to be clear about something, Chris. You said that DOPAR actually has less money than the year before that. Is that what you said?
That is according to my correspondence to James. He said that there is a smaller budget than last year because website expenses and, oh yes, I forgot to say, because website expenses are coming out of DOPAR this year, while in previous years they were separate. There were separate expenses.
But so that is correct, that how the website was funded came out of DOPAR directly this year, whereas years past it hasn't.
In years past it came.
But last budget cycle,
Right.
we gave DOPAR technically more money, and even though the website came out of that funding, what should have been left over was still probably $2,200, which is
Yes, that's-
technically more money than last year.
That's what the comptroller said, and last year, did student government, come out with a new logo, come out with a new rebranding, effort of the organization. It was the same old, whatever we had, with Alex in his office. It was, merchandise from the previous years that have been sitting in the office. And all of that was given out over the summer during Eagle Summits, during the All-American Welcome. We gave out all of our merch then, and oops. I'm sure we'll launch.
No, I do. I'm just asking about that specific point that you made, which was that you're saying that you have less money this year than in years past. But I would disagree with that. Yeah, I would disagree with that claim wholeheartedly.
Yes, and I'm just relaying the message from James.
Okay. I understand, Chris. I'm just
it is
telling you.
valid.
I know you're just the messenger. I'm just telling you that claim is technically incorrect.
Okay, so I guess from my perspective, sure. I'm still
back to
answering.
question?
Point of order,
Senator.
Yeah, this is questioning, and I think people have questions, so I think we can save the back and forth for discussion.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Yes, so, Senator Robbins, it's a valid point. I trust your math. I trust, that you're the finance chair of this fund. And I guess my point would be that the additional money is justified.
Any further questions for the sponsor, Katie?
Yeah, so 2 questions. So I know this is about the rebranding effort. First question is, when are we going to see the new logo and all the efforts of rebranding? And my second question is, you're asking for $1,000 specifically or James is asking for $1,000 specifically, how do you intend on using that $1,000 and like why exactly is it $1,000 instead of not like $7,000 or more than $1,000? Like how do you map out your spending?
Yeah, so last year, Alex Bailey, just to give you some historical context, Alex Bailey, the former secretary predecessor to James Paul, bought 144 t-shirts, 500 water bottles, 500 pens for $2,341.84. I can guarantee you that we will not just be buying t-shirts, water bottles, and pens for over $2,000. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. So I'm going to be coordinating with James to diversify the merchandise that we buy, so it's purposeful, it's meaningful, and it's thoughtful. And to answer your question, could you just, rephrase?
The first question,
Timing for questioning has elapsed. Is there a motion? Katie,
I moved to the second question by
3 minutes. All right, is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, we'll vote. Oh,
I just
Bobby,
want to note that you can also ask questions during discussion.
further discussion on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, we'll move to vote on the motion. All those in favor of extending questioning by 3 minutes, say yay.
Yay.
All opposed, say nay. The yeas have it. You can move the chair, and questioning is extended by 3 minutes.
So you wanted me to ask my
What-
first question here?
So your first question is when can you see the rebranding efforts, right?
Yeah.
So James, he required all of us, directors, the deputy directors, and also the first year fellows in our cabinet to sign non-disclosure agreements.
Okay.
And
No, if you're not able to answer,
this
that's
one,
fine.
so Katie, in regards to seeing the rebranding efforts, I promise you, I will talk to James this Wednesday
Okay.
to say, hey, the Senate wants to see the rebranding efforts, because I give you my word that the rebranding efforts are very, very good, and it's impressed me. So in regards to, seeing the new logo, seeing the new website, I will talk with James. I will actually email him or contact him today, right after this meeting, and ask him to send the Senate a preview. And it's gonna be kind of like what KPU and Sub did last year in terms of, what Yaz did in regards to showing KPU's budget and to being as transparent as possible. Because that's what the e-board has committed to. That's what, AUSG as a whole wants to move towards is, a lot of transparency. So the entire student body cannot see the rebranding efforts at this time. But given, your involvement with student government, I'm sure James will let the senators have a preview of what's to come.
Further questions for the sponsor, Jeremy?
As far as like the $1,000, was this number obtained by getting a general understanding of what you were looking to buy and looking how much it would cost, or is this just like general?
And just Curtis, I have the breakdown of costs here if you want me to talk about that.
Sure, I yield.
Thanks.
That's
Yeah, so what James is planning on buying right now is 1,000 social media handouts for $108, 4,100 stickers, like laptop stickers, for $736, 150 t-shirts for $1,260, 1,000 phone wallets for $709, and that comes to $2,814.
Further questions for the sponsor? All right, seeing no further questions, we'll move to discussion on the whole directive as a whole. Discussion on the directive, Jacob.
Yeah, so it saddens me to say this, but I will not be supporting this today. And there are two reasons why I'm not going to be supporting this directive. Most principally, though, in years past, when a directive has been brought forward to this body, it's been pretty customary that the person who is requesting the money would meet with the finance committee, at least the finance committee chairman. $1,000 is not an insignificant sum of money, and I understand that perhaps what the plan is under NDA sort of specified, which is non-disclosure agreement, under NDA specified content, right? But the finance committee has signed NDAs, so that information should be shared with us. And because that information has not been shared with me, and because it hasn't been shared with the committee, I'm not inclined to support this today. It's a lot of money to move. I think I've made myself pretty available. I've spoken with James before, so he has my contact information. So, and I've let him know that I'm not going to be supporting this directive today. So I would just have as a point of order, can a directive be tabled?
If we get with the cost of the first committee.
Further discussion on the directive as a whole. Bobby?
Okay, so just a couple of clarifying points about whether DOPAR has more money this year or last year. So the just baseline budgets, last year DOPAR had 2,000, this year DOPAR had 3,000. What James is saying, why he has less money, is that historically, even though it should be very clearly, the website expenses were not paid out of DOPAR. This year they were, but since we're moving to a new web platform, actually we're saving about $1,500, so it's even better, Curtis. And that leaves James after web expenses with $2,200. So last year, after web expenses, DOPAR had 2,000. This year they have about 2,200. So just to clarify that, I just said what all the merchandise purchases that James is planning are. It's about $2,800 for all those things I said. To Katie's question, I appreciate Curtis's discretion, but I can say that this is not like secret information, and that currently James is planning on doing the rebranding in the first half of November. So that's when the new website should be out. And that is also why this directive is here today. It's a timing issue with shipping and everything. I'm neutral on whether the Senate wants to do this or not, or whether they want to do it at a later date, or whether they want to change the amount of money. I am completely indifferent to all of those things that you guys could do, but just for some neutral background information, the reason that this is up today is because James would like these stuff in the beginning of November. And if you have any other clarifying questions, I'm here.
I have two questions. Okay, so question number one, if we were to look at this next week, does that harm the shipping issue?
Well, it's like so that would make it, that would not allow James to put in a purchase request in the next week. I don't know if he was intending to do that anyway. Like if the Senate passes this, James could then put in that whole $2,800 order next week. If the Senate puts it next week, he could not put that whole $2,800 order. He still has, independent of this directive, $2,040, so just over $2,000. He can do anything he wants with that at any time. But this, he cannot use this money over the next week if you guys table it or what have you.
Okay, my second question, Jacob, would you prefer this to come to the finance committee?
Yeah. It's finance related, so.
Yeah, okay.
Further discussion, Curtis?
I guess I would say in the interest of time, in the interest of, rebranding efforts with the organization, James has had, unfortunately, James did not reach out to the chair of the finance committee, and, I will talk with him about that, but in terms of this, this merchandise order and, the social media handouts that includes, our Facebook, our Twitter, our Instagram. If you look at our Instagram now versus our Instagram of 1 year ago, the following has over doubled, or I can even say tripled. And here's the thing, the old, have you seen the old, social media handouts? If so, you can see that, it still has like a Snapchat logo, and student government doesn't have a Snapchat. We're almost hitting 1,000 followers on Instagram, and just about a year ago, we were only at 500. And the entire rebranding efforts, this was a long time coming. And when we're getting, social media handouts, stickers, T-shirts, phone wallets, and all of those merchandise for the new, the new logo, I do realize it's not a insignificant amount of money, but we're being smart about it. We're being purposeful with our spending. James has had extensive conversations with the executive board and with Bobby about, how can student government rebrand without exceeding an excessive amount of, I guess, spending dollars in regards to spending, student money in a, in a frivolous way. And we even applied a 25% off coupon for, our merchandise handouts. And, James could have easily like overlooked the promo codes and whatnot, but, we found those promo codes. We're really looking forward to rebranding student government as an organization. And, like Bobby said, this new website could come as soon as November. We're working on it. So I believe, as important the finance committee is, the finance committee does allocate funds to each part of student government. The finance committee assesses, the spending of our student government money. And, that's true. And, but James has extensively spoken with his executive board, including the comptroller who oversees the spending of our student government. And this directive, we're not asking for 10,000, we're asking for $1,000. And that merchandise can be used for years to come, like it has done in the past.
Sure.
So I understand that, but I also understand Jacob's point. So I'm gonna ask this question. When is the latest that you actually need that money to still go out with your timeline of doing the rebranding and everything?
James would like this $1,000 now. And like, he asked me to introduce it today at this meeting. And, it's great. We're having a conversation about where the money's going. I've told you where the money's going. I told you that, we're saving money on our website from our previous years. Our website is going to be mobile friendly. It's going to be also, friendly to users on computers. And the old website just is bulky. It's linear. Our old logo, it's over 10 years old. Look at yourself 10 years ago, and that's not the same person you are today. And student government wants to move into the future, into the next decade, 2020. We want to move forward with our rebranding efforts. And, I agree, the funding committee, the finance committee, it's important to, I guess, oversee money, to make sure it's being spent well. But, it's also important to see the timing and the necessity and, the urgency that we need to have as a Senate to pass this directive today.
Jacob?
I just have like a few things I want to say. I really just want to make this really important distinction. My concern today has nothing to do with the job that James has been doing. I actually really think, I commend the job that the secretary has been doing, and the secretary's cabinet is doing to make a real concerted effort to bring new people into the government, like increase the understanding and kind of really have a bigger presence. Like that is not the issue. I support all of those efforts wholeheartedly. The issue that I have is that $1,000 is not an insignificant sum of money. And while I understand that there's a timeline, and while I understand that there's a need to want this done immediately, the other issue is that while you can talk all to the executives about the rebranding efforts and things like that, at the end of the day, it's the Senate you come to ask for money, and it feels as though there wasn't that important consultation, in particular when it comes to money and it comes to the role that we play. So I'm torn between feeling like there's this timeline that has to be adhered to, and to also there being this kind of like this need of oversight, this need to kind of understand where this $1,000 expenditure is coming from, what the logo looks like, and what the plan really is. Not to say that I don't doubt that there's a plan, and that I don't have confidence or faith in what the secretary is doing, because I do. It's just that the Senate is supposed to be the one that approves the transfer of money, and it feels as though the correct people weren't consulted. So I'm a little, that's sort of where my concerns come.
Mr. Speaker, I believe that, Senator Sellinger and Senator Robbins brought up great points. Senator Sellinger, Katie wants, we don't have that senator requirement in the rules and department anymore, so I'll just say Katie and Jacob do have valid concerns. Katie had her concerns about, I haven't seen, the new logo. If I were in your position, I'd be like, what? You didn't show us the new logo and you want to buy merch that has the new logo on it. So that's point taken. Jacob had his point about doing the things the right way. About, yes, you've consulted with the comptroller who, logs and keeps track of student government spending. But the Senate allocates and, adjudicates money to different departments, and I would love for James to meet with Jacob and the Senate's Finance Committee on this matter. I move to table this directive.
Is there a second? on that
Second.
motion? Discussion on the motion?
It needs to be specified when thing.
Yeah, what do you want?
I move to table this bill to the next.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, discussion on the motion. Jacob?
So I have been corresponding with James right now, as a matter of fact, and he has let me know that obviously while he would like the funds immediately, he can wait another week. And so it's my understanding that we're going to be meeting next week. So him and I will meet. I feel comfortable having this table, speaking with him this week, and so that's why I'll be supporting this motion.
All right, any further discussion on the motion? Curtis?
Yes, so my initial thoughts, from James, with our correspondence and with our talks, is that he wanted this directive introduced now, and great that James is, that we introduced this directive today to get the conversation going. And I didn't even know, Jacob and his finance committee was not consulted about this directive earlier, so I look forward to, to consulting with James and also Jacob and members of the finance committee who I hope, there's enough quorum for that. And then we can do things the right way. We can go through the right steps, hash out, what are we spending the money and why, and then move this forward next week.
Further discussion on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, we'll move to vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion to table Directive 1819-003 until next week's Senate meeting, say yay.
Yay.
All opposed, say nay. The yeas have it, motion is passed. All right, now moving to further new business, now to the confirmation of Adam Ovian to be senator for the class of 2022. The floor is yours.
Great, thank you. I know I already addressed some of the members present because we had the meeting just before this, but I'm going to keep it short. I'm Adam, sophomore in SIS. As I said earlier, I'm the secretary of the World Politics Society, which aims to bring together SIS and SPA through discussion, as well as some of the other schools, through discussion and speakers to address thematic areas through the lens of current events. I also work with emirs on their high school programming, work in the fall, and their high school competition in the spring. And then I'm here just because I think that student government, as I'm sure you all understand, is very impactful on the student experience, and I want to be here to make it a positive one. And so with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Questions for the nominee, Rashida?
Adam, can you just tell me about the projects and how you organize them, please?
Projects.
And the club and how you.
Oh yeah, so in my role as secretary, I have some clerical duties. I take care of logistics for events. We've only had one speaker so far this semester, so it's not too much of a time commitment, but at the same time, I help sort of just make sure everything works right and plan events. Kind of how it works. Yeah.
further questions for the nominee? Okay, seeing no further questions.
Can I just address one more thing?
Sure.
Sure, thank you. Just really briefly, I was asked at the last meeting what I would like to do in this week, because I'm only going to be here, for that time unless I'm reelected. And so to that question, I just want to say that I will be advancing a bill if I'm accepted today that looks to make it easier and more accessible for students who choose to come to these meetings and want to get involved and ask questions, because I am one of the only students who's been here for one of the 1 to 2 past meetings. And it was very difficult for me to sort of get involved and ask questions about people giving presentations and people speaking here as senators. And considering that we represent as a body almost 8,000 students, and the fact that there's no other students here today on their own volition, to that, I think that we should try to make it as accessible as possible for the students who choose to come here. And so I welcome you to support that bill if I do get elected today. Thank you.
All right, questions for the nominee? Any further questions? Move on.
Are you running again?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to ask that.
Okay. Further questions? Seeing no further questions, if you could please leave the room.
Sure, thank you.
All right, discussion on the nominee. Rashida?
I like how Sherry was. I like how Sherry was role is since she's the vice president.
Okay, so the president does planning, I as VP do planning and logistics, the treasurer does budgetary stuff, and Adam does clerical work, and he does social media, but he has to put that into the rest of the work.
Any further discussion on the nominee? All right, seeing no further discussion, we'll move to vote on the nominee. All those in favor of confirming Adam Ovian to be senator for the class of 2022, say yay. All opposed, say nay. Order. All right. Order. Hang on, order. I'm going to entertain the parliamentarian. Order.
Okay, so no votes were cast. So technically, he didn't receive a majority vote.
No, so if someone calls for division, then you guys redo the.
Division! Yes, you can do that.
All right. We have a motion to divide the question, so we'll go ahead and do that by hand.
Mr. Speaker,
Yes.
I would like to move to the highest level of voting, move to vote via secret ballot.
No, I don't think that's in order.
Okay,
We did.
yes,
It has to
but
be-
hold on, the motion to divide needs to be seconded first.
Okay.
No, it's not a motion. It's a privilege. You just get to call it. And
That's a good
it's
point.
automatically.
But then the motion to do by secret ballot is allowed.
But it's out of order because we were voting at that time.
Well, no, because he can motion to it and then it needs to get approved to vote in that manner.
And then it would override the divide.
Well, the question would still be divided, but in the manner of
Secret ballot.
yeah, in the manner of secret.
Okay. Order. All right. Do we have a second for the motion to vote via secret ballot? Seeing no second, that motion's defeated. Okay, we're now on the privilege to divide the question. So we'll go ahead and do that via show of hands. So
You vote for.
you vote via show of hands rather than yay and nay. Yeah, okay?
Can I abstain?
You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, all those in favor of confirming Adam Ovian to be senator for the class of 2022, please do so by a show of hands. If you're in favor of that. Okay, all opposed, show of hands.
What is the?
Hold on.
I'm just confused.
You have to
If
declare
y'all
him.
don't want him to be a senator, this is the time to say.
Can I
no.
speak?
Okay, Jeremy.
Okay, so like, I'm not gonna talk about where you should go, yay or nay or whatever. But as knowing Adam, he has good qualities. I do think he has ideas for the Senate. And Yeah, and at this point, I wouldn't see necessarily a harm with not voting him in, because like, he's running for election anyway. So like, okay.
All right, we're gonna recognize the parliamentarian.
Thank you. The vote's already happened. There's no more discussion on it.
Oh,
One
I'm
person
sorry.
voted in favor, none of you voted against it, I guess. Lost.
Yeah.
So, he
The
said
vote
anyways,
happened.
all of you vote, so you all,
The vote
so the vote wins.
has left the harbor.
Exactly.
Train is
The
gone.
vote's concluded,
You
so,
missed it by two minutes.
exactly, so there's no more discussion.
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, what was the result?
She is now a senator.
I voted yes.
Yeah.
Because I voted.
No, I don't.
Yeah, but no one voted by a show of hands, so you all technically abstained. One person
I-
voted in favor,
I don't know how
so
to-
that's
It just
technically
needs,
the
it
simple
just,
majority.
it just needs a plurality.
So it was one vote for, 0 votes against, however many of you here abstained, things don't count, so.
Is it done?
So,
It's
yes,
done.
great.
Wait.
Now we look really bad.
Yeah. Don't know about him, that y'all are like being very like
Well, that's
quiet.
beside the point. Because apparently-
Very
I've been
immaterial.
voting in person.
Okay, order. Okay, the vote has been concluded. One person, hang on, one person voted in favor, which means that is a plurality, which means he's been confirmed, which means he will now be seated as senator for class of 2022. And we will move to new business. You can get him now.
That was.
Wow.
Really no.
Wow.
I hope y'all let him know.
Okay, so you're now a senator, so congratulations, and then you now have full speaking and voting rights.
Much appreciated.
Okay. All right, now moving to the confirmation of Grace Magnus to be senator for the School International Service. The floor is yours.
Hello, I will also keep this brief. So I'm Grace Magnus. I'm currently a second semester freshman in SIS, but I'm graduating with the sophomore class, so I consider myself a sophomore. I'm here to be hopefully confirmed as a senator for SIS, and even though there is only 1 week or so left in this year of this committee here, I feel that still SIS deserves to be represented and that their vote needs to be heard. And so even within this 1 week, I feel that I will still be able to represent SIS as a school, and I feel that that is a necessary function. And overall, if I am seeking re-election as the senator for SIS, and so in this position, I hope to increase transparency and communication between AUSG and the student body as a whole. And so if anyone has any questions.
Questions for the nominee? Curtis?
What are 3 ways AU as a university can be more transparent?
So when I talk about transparency, I feel that this should be between AUSG and the students. And so I feel that one way to do this could be to, Adam kind of touched on this, is getting more people involved in coming to the actual Senate meetings, holding town halls and making those more well-known across campus. I know that one is occurring on Monday, and I feel that more people, not as many people as we'd like, are aware of that. And also just making more known that students are able to come to their senators personally and discuss what they feel needs to be done within AUSG.
Further questions? Curtis?
Are you following AUSG Senate on Instagram?
I currently am not, and I feel that this is also kind of goes to show that transparency and awareness of AUSG isn't as big as it should be and as it could be. So I feel that as a whole, we need to increase awareness of AUSG, what it does, and how students can become involved.
In terms of transparency, should AUSG reach out to you or should the students reach out to AUSG?
I feel there needs to be a balance of both because it can't be solely put on AUSG to reach every single student, seeing as there are around 8,000 students at this school. And so a balance between AUSG doing more promotional activities, even just as simple as hanging flyers around or just sending out more emails, making themselves more public, but then also leaving it to the students to then come to AUSG and do their part to participate.
Any further questions for the nominee? Seeing no further questions, if you could please return. Thank you. Discussion on the nominee. Jeremy?
I love her answers. It's fully real.
You want?
Let's not mess up this time.
Oh, if I didn't have to be impartial. All right, further discussion. Adam?
I'll just say, I'm sure there probably isn't much disagreement, but I think if this meeting didn't already make it evident that if there's really anyone who, chooses to be here and wants to represent the interests of students, we should be more than happy to take them.
Further discussion? Okay, seeing no further discussion, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of approving Grace Magnus to be senator for SIS, say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed, say nay. You can use the chair of the yay sign and choose confirm.
Oh, it's not even done yet. I got really into it. Now.
So congratulations, you're now senator for SIS, and you now have full speaking and voting rights. Now moving to the reconfirmation of Alex Russo to be an associate member of the board.
Hello. I feel like I've been through a war. This is my third time here doing this confirmation thing. Sorry, I was a lot more put together for CRB. Sorry. I'm a senior, graduated a year early, flag major. I used to be vice president of College Democrats. I'm running an AU for Elizabeth Warren group right now. I'm vice president of Zeta Beta Tau. Very involved on this campus. I'm actually the longest serving member of a judicial board. I was confirmed in September of last year, and I was the only member until Brian came on board. That was a scary semester, let me tell you. It was tough for me. And thank God nothing came up. That was, well, one thing came up. But besides that, nothing else like life-changing came up. But since then, we've really come around on all cylinders, and we have 4 out of our 5 members. We have our inspector. We had a great process. We reviewed the judicial register and all the different policy books. We've been putting out lots of really good opinions. Brian has been wonderful. Yeah, it's been a wonderful time. I've got a year left. I hope you keep me at this point. I'll take any questions.
All right, questions for the nominee?
Oh, okay.
Seeing no questions? Thank you. All right, discussion on the nominee. Seeing no discussion, we'll move straight to vote on the nominee. All those in favor of confirming Alex Russo to be an associate member of J Board, say yay.
Yay.
All opposed, say nay. The yeas have it. Please reconfirm.
Yeah.
Oh, I keep forgetting. That's right. I need a time to
That was like 45 seconds.
I was literally tying my shoe. I didn't have time to tie my shoe. We're sorry. Thank you so much. It's been a privilege. I love you all.
Why are you talking as if you didn't get
I feel invested. You know, I was here for 3 hours at this point. Yeah, that did.
All right, congratulations. Now we'll move to the election of the chair of the Special Committee on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. The floor is open for nominations. Rashida?
I nominate Jeremy for this position.
All right, is there a second? Second. All right. Further nominations?
Isn't Jeremy vice chair?
Yeah, vice chair.
Oh.
No, that's for standing.
Oh, same, yeah, sorry.
This is what committees, sorry, if the chair could articulate which committees are not standing committees and which committees are.
Sure. So the only 3 standing committees are Student Rights and Services, Campus and Student Life, and then Accessibility, Transparency, and Accountability, which is CADA. Senators can only serve on one of the 3. You can serve on any number of the special or ad hoc committees. DEI is a special committee.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, any more nominations? All right, seeing no nominations, the floor is closed for nominations. If you'd like to make a speech, the floor is yours.
I hope to do my best in this position.
Okay. Questions for the nominee, Adam?
Could you explain what you'd like to do as the chair?
Well, I'll go about this like I generally go about anything I embark on doing. The first thing I'll do is like see what they've done in the past, see how things are flowing now. From there, I'll observe that, and then I'll decide like where changes we can be or what other initiatives we can take on. I definitely start talking to relevant players on campus where I feel that I could help with this position.
Okay. Further questions for the nominee, Curtis?
What is diversity, equity, and inclusion to, and how will you apply that as a chair? And will, like, I guess, what are your plans as chair of the DEI committee?
Okay. So diversity, equity, and inclusion. Most times we think about that in regards to minorities, which it should be. I think that's one element of it. But I also think we can expand that to being diverse, being equitable and inclusive of thought. So there's multiple ways you can go about that. And I'd sit with the committee members and see what ideas they have. But as far as like what I want to do, for instance, Seth and I have been talking about a bill that he's looking to put forward. And I don't want to tell what your bill's about. So what I'll say is essentially finding ways that maybe we can help specifically with this bill, with any other bills, to make sure that we're thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion all matters in any bill. Because I do think in most bills we pass, that always should be a thought process in there. So yeah, with his bill specifically, there's been more, but he hasn't introduced that, so I don't want to put the horse before the cart, I think is how to say it.
Further questions for the nominee, Luan?
So when I served in this,
Sorry, yeah, executives.
well,
Can I
Where
get
is
him
that
speaking?
rule?
Can
I
we-
don't know.
How do
That's in
we,
the rules of written form.
how do we get him
It's
speaking
right.
right?
You can suspend the rules.
I would like to suspend the rules.
All right, is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Discussion on the motion? All right, seeing no discussion. Well, sorry. Yeah,
Just a
discussion.
question for the chair.
Mhm.
Is there a precedent for suspending rules? Like, how often is that done in committee sessions?
There's not- I mean, there is a precedent as
Did
far
we
as.
do it last time?
Yeah, it's been done in this session.
Okay.
All right, just further discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing no further discussion, we'll move to vote on the motion. All those in favor of suspending the rules to allow the vice president to speak during question period for the election, say yay.
Yay.
All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Those are suspended.
my one question is when I was a senator, we, myself, Joshua Dantzler, and Mila, who served as VP last year, had created a bill that was AUSG diversity survey. And I'm wondering if you are subsequently, you probably will be chosen as chair. Where do you kind of look on the efforts of not so much, I mean, there is going to be efforts that you're going to want to do, like student body related, that's diversity inclusion, but I'm wondering where do you see kind of like how you can add your mark to fix like the problem that USG has in terms of diversity, and in terms of like the work that we do to include those other students outside to come into student.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I definitely try to help with that. Whether it be trying to do events or partnering with other people to do events, making sure to go, especially to the diverse clubs, making sure that they're aware of what's going on. We do have elections, they definitely can come. Seeing how certain things affect them, seeing what I can do as an advocate for them would definitely be things I'd want to work on. Then talking with you and other people, see any other ways that I could work would definitely be something I'd be willing to do.
Other questions, Katie?
Yeah, so two questions. One is, are you familiar with President Law's plan how to utilizing that at all as chair? And then secondly, you mentioned diversity of thought. I just need to elaborate on that.
Okay, so I'll start with your second question first. Oftentimes when a majority of people agree on something, other people feel that they can't speak out if they have a differing opinion. And in some circumstances, depending on what that stance is, I understand that. But in my latitude, I do think everyone's opinion, thought should be respected because they're entitled to. So just kind of like working on those issues, I think would be important. And in regard to the first question, I am aware of it. It's been a while since I've looked at it, but like if I'm confirmed, I definitely will be needing to look at that a lot more. So yes.
Any further questions, Curtis?
Who are Angela's, diversity and inclusion co-directors, and how do you plan to, I guess, bridge the gap between the legislative branch and the executive branch? To program and also to spread the word about what we're doing in AUSG about diversity.
So I believe Diamond is one of them. I was a proxy senator for SEP when those nominations went through towards the end of the spring semester. I don't believe I was a senator when the second director was confirmed, but I'm not sure on that. Regardless of which, I definitely want to reach out to them to see exactly what they're doing as far as with Angela and from the e-board, and see if ways that I can help with what they're doing, or maybe bring new ideas to what they're doing, and vice versa.
All right, time for questioning has Myers. Is there a motion?
Yeah. Motion to accept my 3 minutes.
Is there a second on the motion? Seeing no second, motion fails. All right. Now moving into discussion, if you could.
Oh, yeah. I have to.
And then the full rules are now back into effect. Okay. Discussion on the nominee. Curtis?
I don't blame Jeremy for not knowing Natasha's name just because she was confirmed the same meeting as his confirmation. So I look forward to Diamond and Akamsha to meet with Jeremy and to have, I guess, collaboration between the Senate and also, Angela's co-directors. This is really important, not only in AUSG, but like Katie said, it's important to the university.
Further discussion happened.
I would have appreciated a greater articulation of what his plans would be as chair, or what at least he's looking to do. But ultimately, I can speak to sort of knowing him as a person, as I'm sure everyone has relationships, both professional and personal, with him. That I'm sure that he would probably be a great addition to the committee.
Further discussion on the nominee. All right, seeing that. Oh, Seth?
Sorry, lastly, the bill Jeremy was referring to, I just wanted to say that he took his own initiative without even being in the position to talk to me about how to make the, how to work with a bill that would not be normally directed to that committee, to still working to make it diverse and inclusive and to get different aspects of that included. So I thought that showed pretty good dedication, taking that it wasn't even in the seat yet.
Thank you. Further discussion on the nominee? Seeing no further discussion, can someone get him? You can vote. Thank you. Oh, no.
Do you need help?
Okay, so we're gonna vote on your confirmation, and then you can, of course, vote.
That's why secret ballots like that. That's why Shaw's voting on the
Can we suspend the rules? Well, I move, since Jeremy is the only nominee, I move to suspend the rules.
Second.
My voice vote.
Okay.
Voice vote.
There a second?
Second.
All right, discussion on the motion. Okay, seeing no discussion, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of the motion to vote via voice vote, say yay.
Yay.
All opposed, say nay. Okay, we'll move to vote for the chair of the Special Committee on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. All those in favor of confirming Jeremy Ward to the position, say yay.
Yay.
All opposed, say nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and he is confirmed. Now moving to old business. First, to the consideration of Bill 1819-010, the upholding of separation of powers bill. So would the sponsor like to speak on the bill?
If anyone has any questions, let's just start with that.
Okay, questions for the sponsor?
Question for the chair. Did it end up, I'm assuming that since it's present here, it did advance out of the last committee?
Yes.
Okay. And it was unchanged?
Unchanged, no amendments were made to the bill. But during discussion period, you can make amendments.
All right, Katie.
For the benefit of members who aren't in CRP deliberation of the last several weeks, would you mind going over what the bill is, the purpose of it?
Bring up the bill.
Can you send it to me? I don't have it. The bill? Okay. Yeah. I thought you meant the PowerPoint. Oh, where is it?
All right. Is there a question?
I just asked Jeremy to like explain it.
What?
Okay.
This bill seeks to clarify the distinction of separations of power between three branches of government. It seeks to do that by excluding all members of the executive branch who receive stipends from being able to proxy in the AUSG Senate. So, yeah.
Further questions for the sponsor? Okay. Okay, seeing no further question, we'll move to discussion on the bill in its entirety. Discussion on the bill, Bobby.
So I got two things. First of all, my concern with this bill, it like theoretically intersects with my job as comptroller, but I wouldn't be allowed to proxy for other reasons. So whether or not this bill passes doesn't have any impact on me. But I would like to see the Senate function. I think even if you don't like a certain kind of person as a proxy, a Senate with them as a proxy, as bad as you might find it, is better than a Senate that is literally incapable of doing anything because it can't get quorum. And today showed you, like, at the beginning of the year and the end of the year, it's hard to get quorum. Once we get these new senators in here, it'll probably get a little bit easier. But if you vote for this, you are restricting your own ability to get quorum. And I think today showed that that is a valuable tool to be able to get quorum. And my second thing is that we have a wide variety of people in here in terms of their familiarity and exposure to this organization. And I think, you know, everyone, including myself, came into this organization with misconceptions about how things work. And those are corrected over time. So if you are brand new to this organization, please have a little bit of like recognition that other people understand how it works a little bit better than you do, and don't just assume like a certain way for how things work because it might not be correct.
Sarah.
The only counter up to that, and I will admit that I definitely still have a learning curve that I have to get through, is the question is if senators just aren't taking the responsibility when they know they aren't going to be here and they aren't formally requesting to Sean, having a proxy senator because they have to formally request, because we have more than enough people who were qualified here. The issue was getting in contact with someone who could make the request. So the question is, even if we don't allow executives, that's going to help try to hold senators accountable. And whether or not executives still can, how are we going to guarantee that senators either take responsibility for their absences and request a proxy, whether they're in the room or not, or if they're going to show up?
Yeah, so, I mean, I've spoken a lot on this, so I'll try to keep it short. I agree with what Bobby's saying in terms of the practicality of this. We've seen, today we were delayed by about 20, 30 minutes because we didn't have a quorum. And there were a lot of executives in the room, and they received stipends, not just members of the executive branch, like president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, or I'm sorry, comptroller, but also several directors were in the room, and kind of shows that if we were to bar them from proxy because they receive stipends, we could have met quorum a little bit sooner on what the agenda consists of, any conflicts with them speaking and proxy at the same time. I also agree that, you know, it takes a little bit to kind of get the hang of Senate. I'll admit, I started last fall, I was elected in like general AUSG elections, and kind of just now getting the hang of things. And So it does take quite a bit of time to really understand what the Senate does, how the Senate functions. And so I'll echo the same concerns that yes, there are problems that are kind of obvious to newcomers and that can be addressed right off the bat. It's just, it takes a little bit of time to understand what the remedy to those might be. And so that's pretty much all I have for now. I've been pretty adamantly against this for a number of reasons that we've discussed over the last few weeks. I don't see that as practical. I don't see a logical consistency with the reasoning of receiving stipends and how that relates to conflicts of interest, whether or not you're receiving stipends. So if anyone wants me to elaborate on these factors, I don't want to take too much time with it. I didn't really know.
My response to like that general argument of for efficiency is that it's kind of like that's kind of like addressing the symptoms and not the virus, which is like if there's not enough senators here actively to reach quorum, then we should fix that problem by getting senators here to reach quorum, not by like necessarily propagating the proxies. And like today is a perfect example that we did have, this bill's not enacted in any way yet. We had execs here, and the senators themselves did not really give us that second step to be able to actually have them as proxies. So I feel like in a way, like, I don't think this is really going to limit that much. Like, it's not going to change that much in terms of time and efficiency. I think it'll allow us to focus more effort on addressing the problem of attendance, which I think, again, is like the long-term solution to the problem.
While I appreciate the concerns raised by Senators Selinger and Sitzman related to reaching quorum, I think I'm more in agreement with what Seth is presenting, which is the fact that seemingly, I would encourage all senators when we vote to not consider the threat to quorum as a reason to not vote for this bill, simply because it would seem, as evidenced by today and trying to reach quorum in other meetings, that the risk this specific bill poses to reaching quorum is far less than the ongoing risk related to why people are not actually showing up.
Shannon?
Thank you. So I definitely appreciate the spirit of this bill. However, I think that the biggest problem we have right now is our inability to reach quorum in general. And so I think that we should be solving that problem. And then later on, if we're consistently able to meet quorum, then we should perhaps reintroduce a concept like this. But for now, I think quorum is the biggest problem that we need to address.
So beautifully said, Sam. We're addressing the symptoms and not the virus. And the essential question of today in regards to this bill is, our inability to reach quorum. And, there are reasons why, some senators are absent today. They are absent for very good reasons. And, like Milan said earlier, we're students first. But then again, when the voters speak and when we're confirmed in front of the Senate, once we're voted or once we're confirmed, once we're, a part of this body, we should honestly sign like some sort of, promissory note saying, we will show up to every meeting or whatnot. And that's up for the speaker to do in the future. And in regards to, I guess, a conflict of interest, that's essentially what this bill is addressing. I know we want to take the easy way out. Let Mulan, proxy for. Are you proxying for Parker today?
No.
Yes. See, he's not proxying for Parker today, and Bobby, he likes to proxy a lot. He even proxied for me for Pete's sake. So I asked him to proxy a few meetings ago because he represented my interests, and he also shows up. He's a very committed person, and he's a very reliable person, and that's the people who we should be voting for, in the upcoming elections. But at the same time, you know, Bobby, you're not a senator anymore, man. It's okay because now you're getting paid unlike us senators. So, you know, are people not showing up because they are actually busy or dealing with issues? Or, you know, are people not showing up because they don't want to? And just for the record, I'd love for Sean to just say not who's absent today, but to say who is no longer a part of this body, just because there have been some, I guess, resignations / suspensions. And I guess bottom line in regards to proxy, you know, Adam had a great point earlier, you know, why do members of the student body not come to these meetings? Well, first, we don't start on time. Second, you know, it's boring and mundane. I mean, it's already 4:30. I want to go home. So I'm going to stop there because I want to go home. But this bill is really important and we should pass it today.
Did you have a question for me?
Yes,
Do
could
want
you
me to go through the
clarify
roll?
any removals or suspensions or like just addressing, you know, who's not here and I guess why.
We do that at the end of voting?
Yeah, this isn't germane.
Sure, after.
Yeah. Jeremy?
I think we should, well, let me not say it that way. I disagree with the reason why we're not meeting quorum. We didn't meet quorum today because the executives weren't allowed to proxy, because they were, technically. No? Okay, his advisors knew they were. But even the deputy directors, when they were here, we didn't meet quorum just because they weren't here. This bill hadn't been in effect. We failed to meet quorum because senators who weren't here failed to request from the speaker that they were going to have proxy. This does nothing with that because they didn't use it with this bill in place. So it's not changing anything whether that's in place or not. They still have to ask the speaker that they're going to have proxy and then he has to either accept or deny the request. This changes nothing about that. Now, if we want to get into whether or not we feel that they have to do that, that's a separate discussion, but this bill would do nothing with quorum. You're either going to have senators request or they're not going to request.
Yeah, so if I could speak to that just a little bit. The way proxies usually get requested in Senate, from my experience over the last year, it's not always like a formal request made in advance, like before the meeting, knowing that, okay, if I'm not going to be here, I know I have to send someone in my place to proxy. More often it's been, we don't have quorum, let's see who's not here, reach out to them and see if someone in the room who isn't a currently sitting senator, or if oftentimes, like, there's been a number of occasions where it's been like, let's go out in the hallway and find a student who can proxy, just so we have the numbers, and we'll message someone who isn't present and ask for their permission to have whoever it is proxy in their place. So more often than not, it's an on-the-spot day of, like, we need to meet quorum now type of thing, and not necessarily, well, I know a week in advance that I'm not going to be at Senate that week. And so the way that this bill would hinder us meeting quorum in that sense is if there's people in the room who receive stipends from their role in the executive branch and we need to meet quorum, we could ask them to proxy on someone's behalf who isn't here. And so it would just be a matter of messaging or texting or communicating with someone who isn't here, asking if someone is here to proxy for them. And if this bill were to go into effect and we were to end up in a situation like that, it would just take longer to find someone who meets the requirements of a proxy that isn't receiving a stipend from the executive branch to proxy for that senator and their running form. So it's just about, like, limiting the pool of resources that are available, and I don't think that's very helpful when, like, today we were delayed by half an hour. We've been at risk of losing quorum every meeting since the beginning of the semester, and I think any action taken towards limiting the number of people who could help us meet quorum and function as a body is detrimental.
Just really brief. I think that the excellent program in the speaker's office with these first-year fellows is a great resource. A lot of students who are going to be here with little no conflict of interest that sort of proxies. And like that's the other thing is we can always just make like a list of students completely elsewhere who are willing to like be on-call proxies. And I think there's like a lot of other solutions to the issue of not having proxies on hand, like besides just like exec members with stipends.
I was just gonna say that, I mean, there are some other hands up as well, but, I think that we have all kind of started to veer away from the issue at hand and more towards the farm side, and so I think we should steer direction back towards that, and what things that I would like to, well, there are other people who want to talk, but after that, I would like to motion that we do it sooner rather than later.
Are you motioning that now?
No, I'll let
Jeremy?
Just going off of what Seth said earlier, quorum is justified by a lot of things. District here is specifically just saying all of separation of powers. To have it the easy way out, it's essentially you exchanging what you should be doing for accountability, which I disagree with on a personal level. I'm not saying that's what's going on. That's just how I view it personally. But many of the news senators here talk about transparency, accountability, and in that sphere alone, I think at least hope that they would support this bill as well.
It's just real quick. I remember the days when Seth would ask Jeremy to proxy.
I sure
for-
did.
And guess what? Jeremy wasn't a member of the executive board who received the stipend. Because guess what? Seth engages with his constituents, and he knew Jeremy, who was also interested in student government. So he chose Jeremy to proxy for him. Mind blowing.
Adam?
Thank you. While I can't speak to the sentiments behind those who brought forth this bill, I can say that I think that ultimately, while I appreciate the efforts made by executives in the past semester who have acted as proxies and the contributions they've made to the sessions that they've participated in, I think that we should try to, for those who are concerned about reaching quorum as a result of this bill, we should try to think about it in a positive manner, which is really that this gives us another opportunity to reach out to any one of the literally thousands of other students that are at this school that we're here to represent. And what I would like to, what I would argue is that we should pass this bill based on the sentiments in it, as were expressed by Senator Stilwell, but we should take all of these concerns that everyone has about reaching quorum and use that as an opportunity to reach out to all of these people out here. Because as much as I appreciate the opportunity that you guys have given me today, unfortunately, while this committee has made efforts to reach out to the community, I am not here because of those. I sort of just came in here on happenstance because I followed Jeremy in here, okay? And ultimately, I think that I don't want to use that to indicate that the efforts made by this committee to reach out have been ineffective, but I think it proves that more should be done. And I think that we need to pass this bill based on the sentiments in it. And then all of us need to actually go out and encourage people to come in. I mean, for God's sake, there's people out there. Thank you.
Yeah, so, Adam, I agree with you that, Senate should be making more of an effort to recruit students, and especially with elections coming up soon, we'll be seeing, a lot more students getting involved in student government, like we've been saying before. Typically towards the end of the year and the beginning of the year, as people find new commitments and, either leave school, come to school, forget, like, over the summer that they're in Senate. It decreases turnout a little bit. I do agree that, we should be reaching out to some more people. That's not part, I just want to clarify, we've been talking about transparency, making ourselves available to people. That's not necessarily what CATA is responsible for. I'm sure we're more responsible for kind of holding people accountable in their respective roles and not necessarily reaching out. Senators are required to have office hours. That's a great opportunity to make themselves available to recruit people. I think because we've been talking about quorum a lot, and that's kind of a secondary concern of the bill from, like, besides what's been written in it, if we want to turn folks back to what the language of the bill is, I still have concerns about the language saying all members of the executive branch who receive stipends. That is far more than the 4 elected roles of the executive branch. That's about 30 people, like Jeremy presented earlier, and listed out anyone who receives a stipend as a member of the executive branch. We were kind of saying, you know, well, we have other friends we can reach out to proxy in our place. I would pose the question, what if the friends that, or the people that you feel best represent your interests as a proxy serve in some capacity in the executive branch? That's the case for me in a number of ways. Not that I'm voting purely out of that interest, because I've been at every Senate meeting since being elected. But you know, it limits the pool of people that we can pick from. And I think, you know, we're all college students. I think we can all trust each other to say, like, who represents a senator's interest best, the constituency best of that respective senator. I don't think we need to, you know, make the executive branch seem like power hungry people who would only proxy and then vote in their own interests. I think that's, you know, a very bad perception to have, especially as we're trying to work more closely with the executive branch to pin them as people who would come to Senate and then vote to increase their own stipends or forward programs in their own cabinet. I don't think that's the right mindset to have.
All right, so the defense I've heard of this in response to the idea that it's going to make it harder for you guys to get quorum, which is already hard enough anyway, is that, you know, you're addressing the symptoms and not the cause, and you should be reaching out to people in the hallway, and so on. You have to realize that this, like, preventing executives who get stipends from proxying would not make it so that people who are in the Senate do a better job of being in the Senate and show up for meetings. This is not addressing the cause either. This has nothing to do with making people attend the meeting more often. That's just not the case. And like, if you're like, you know, we all like, you know, flowery rhetoric about engaging with people more often. But like, if you're just going out and getting someone in the hallway and interrupting them when they were trying to study and making them sit in this meeting, that's not going to be a productive contribution to student government. That's not a worthwhile use of their time or the Senate's time. But on the other hand, people in executive positions, like Curtis, know about student government, and they know like what is going on in these meetings, and they can actually do something. So getting someone in the hallway, you're basically just cheating the system, where they're not like actually at the meeting, they just happen to be in that space in that room. So yeah, this isn't like doing all those things that you want to do, like gathering people's ideas, like Adam said, to solve the problem of people not showing up in the first place. That bill doesn't do that, and if you guys do embark on that project, I encourage that. That sounds good. But in the meantime, if you pass this bill, which has nothing to do with encouraging people to go to meetings more often, and you don't get quorum, that's going to mean that money that needs to get moved around isn't going to move around, and that people aren't going to get confirmed, and the actual business of this organization will be impeded. So I don't know what exactly you're gaining out of this. Yeah, but I've already expressed all of that. So I would urge you not to undervalue the importance of actually functioning as a body, which you seem to be doing.
Okay, this bill seeks to do what's in the highlighted point there. So that's its primary goal. Anything that happens secondarily is another thing. B, this bill does not seek to make executives look bad. I think I said it when we first introduced this, that the executives, when they did proxy this year, did great. They acted as if any other public servant would have. So this bill does not say that whatsoever. But for the sake of time, I move to go straight to voting.
So your motion,
Yes, I
is
motion.
there a second on the motion?
Second.
Is there a discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing no discussion, we'll move on to vote on the motion. All those in favor of tabling discussion and moving to vote on Bill 1819-010, say yay.
Yay.
All opposed, say nay. Leaping with the chair, the yeas have it. Motion passes. We'll now move to vote on Bill 1819-010. All those in favor of approving the bill, say yay.
Yay.
All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
In the
Let's
opinion
get
of the
division on that because you need 2/3. I can't call it, but
All right,
thank you.
division, all those in favor, do it by a
Mr.
show.
Speaker, point of order,
Yes,
division was not called.
That's true.
The speaker can call
I
it
can call it
if he
division.
wants.
Did you call it?
If he
Yes.
can't, if he feels like he can determine it, he can call it. If he doesn't, he can call it.
all right, I call division. All those in favor, raise your hands. Against? Okay, 2/3 is met, bill passes. Okay, now moving to further old business. We are now moving to the consideration of policy book 1819-010, the case policy book. Seeing that the sponsor is not here, we'll move straight to discussion. So discussion on policy book 1819-010, the case policy book. Jeremy?
I motion to go straight to voting.
Okay, is there a second?
Sorry.
All right, we have a second. Discussion on the motion. Katie?
Just because we had a few senators confirm today, I don't think it's best to vote on this today without sharing.
Relevant to that, I would be amenable to moving to voting procedure. If we would also agree to, before that, at least speaking, maybe 1 for, 1 against, not as familiar with the format that we use here, but if there could be at least maybe some brief discussion about the merits of the bill, then I might be amenable to moving to voting procedure rather than table.
All right, just a point of order, we're speaking on the motion specifically to table this motion, move straight to vote. So discussion on that motion. Katie?
Yeah, so I would say that, this isn't, the premise of the policy book isn't a bill like what we just passed. It's a matter of a governing document. And so this carries a bit more weight than other bills that we discuss in the Senate. And that's why I feel like it'd be beneficial to have a little bit more time to go over this document, especially like new senators, but also other senators who like remember their leaders. If it's something that should be watched, this is something that needs to be like looked at seriously and deliberately. There's not necessarily a for or against the policy book because it's a matter of a governing document. I think that it would be beneficial to talk about.
I just want to clarify, I think I heard you right, but technically these aren't governing documents.
Okay.
Yeah, policy.
But it's different than a bill. It's kind of like the gist of it.
Yeah, it's different than a bill, it's still, it governs a
Right.
particular area of student government, but it's not considered a governing document.
Okay, further discussion on the motion to table and vote.
Relevant to that, I would be interested as to whether, related to tabling now, tabling to vote, are there any senators who would like to express any immediacy in us voting today as opposed to next week, or as opposed to after the elections? Are there any others who would speak in support of moving into after the elections? Do any see any particular value in moving it to after? Or I'm not clear as to where the Senate stands on that.
So I'm just going to chime in. So next meeting would be the final deadline to vote for this. That's just depending on whether or not the referendum passes to extend our term. But if we don't pass it by next meeting and the 14th Senate ends, all policy books that are not passed in the 14th Senate are effectively dead and gone, and they would have to be reintroduced in the 15th Senate. So next week, absent the referendum, whether or not that passes, would be the final deadline to pass all policy books. So with that, further discussion on the motion to table and vote. Jeremy?
I raised this motion because I am vice chair of the Student Rights and Services Committee. And the only thing that we added to this was to say that when they had to do training, which we wanted to be in the first couple of weeks. And then we also added in changing from may recuse themselves if they knew someone to should recuse themselves if they knew someone. Everything else is the same that's been previous years. So that's why I raised that. We added when they should have training sessions to make sure that was in the government documents. Well, I mean, this document, which the case director came and said that we did the training and I as in case know that that's when it happened. So we just wanted to put that in writing. And then we felt that if you've had a previous relationship with a client, you should recuse yourself, not think about it. Recuse yourself. So those are the only two things that were changed.
Further discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing no further discussion, we'll move to vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion to table discussion and move straight to vote on the policy book as a whole, say yay.
Yay.
All opposed, say nay.
Motion to what?
Yes. All right, division's granted. All in favor, please show your hands. All opposed? Okay. Motion passes. We'll move straight to vote. Okay, all those in favor of approving policy book 18-19-010, the case policy book, as amended by the Committee on Student Rights and Services, say yay.
Yay.
All opposed, say nay. The opinion of the chair, the yeas have it, and the policy book has been approved. Okay, moving to the next item on the agenda, the consideration of policy book 18-19-012, presidential policy book. Since the sponsors aren't here, we'll move straight to discussion on the policy book as a whole. Bobby?
This policy book, and especially the next one after it, communication policy book, are pretty shaky, in my opinion. And that's nothing to say bad about Angela or James. Like, it's not within their job description to be able to write rules very well. But this policy book, the presidential policy book, is okay because it's mainly just copied from other rules. Like, it has like sections of the Constitution in here and the bylaws. So that really doesn't make sense for its own like policy book, but it's not like bad because that's just kind of redundant. So it's just kind of a nothing. The next one, the communications policy book, which is for the secretary, is just full of a bunch of stuff like can't be enforced. And like, if I were in Brian's position in the J board, I wouldn't know what to do with this policy book. So like, I don't know exactly what you guys do with that information, given that these like books are like full of like not exactly pertinent information. That isn't exactly what a policy book should be, but I just thought I would point it out. I guess if you wanted to, this policy book I think is essentially fine, but the next one, you could just like strike all the text and adopt it anyway. So yeah, that would get rid of that problem, but it would leave you with nothing. So those are my 2 cents.
Have any of the committees review these 2 policy books?
Yeah, they've
So which ones?
They passed through CAP, both of them. Katie?
Yeah, so if I could speak to that just a little bit. When we received the policy books, like Bobby was saying, like it's mainly just copied and pasted from the Constitution and the bylaw. So that's why like I went in required, so it looks nice. I don't know. But there weren't any issues I saw with the specific content in it so much as I don't think, and I forget if there's like a definition of what the policy book has to have in it or not, but I do agree that this isn't adding anything to the role of what the president is supposed to do or what the secretary is supposed to do in terms of communications. Like it just doesn't add anything, and I think that policy book should be saying like, here's what the president is supposed to do, here's what the secretary is supposed to do in regards to communications, and then of course be enforceable by the Senate and by the judicial. So like I was saying, it's not unconstitutional, at least this one isn't because it's taken from the Constitution, so I don't see an issue like that regard. I just don't think it serves the purpose it's intended to. Does that make sense?
Katie, so would you, with that in mind, would you prefer us to vote on it or like have a new one or?
Right, so my understanding of this is that we can amend this as a Senate. So we can take the time to do that. I don't know if there's a way to like refer it back to the president or.
Just vote it down.
Yeah, so like, okay, so we would vote it down and then it would go to the respective law.
So if it's voted down, the president would have to submit a new policy book.
I just want to put a metaphysical point in here of what is in the policy book. There is stuff in this policy book and the next one. And I think there was some confusion. This policy book will exist past administration. So until a new policy book is amended by this body, this is the one that will exist, along with all the other ones. There's a lot of stuff in this one and the communications policy book specifically laid out for this presidential term, for the 2019-2020 term. After this term's over, that stuff will remain in this policy book. So there are great sections in here about what the cabinet, and I didn't mean great like awesome, I great like length. Sections in here about like what the 2019-2020 cabinet looks like and the structure of them and what their responsibilities are. Those positions may not exist in the new presidency, in the new term. So after that, all that stuff would kind of be moot because it's not relevant anymore. Just throwing that out there. It's in this one, it's in the communications policy book. I don't recall if it's in the programming one, or I don't think it's in the finance one either. I don't think you guys lay out your cabinets. But because they're specified as 2019-2020, they wouldn't be required to exist like that, but there would be descriptions of cabinet positions that don't exist. And I think in the communications one, it even lists like Amanda Kaufman, who's a director in the cabinet. Like if you want to request 25 live access, you have to email Amanda. So it's like, what happens when Amanda's gone? Like, so it's kind of weird, just throwing that out there.
Bobby?
Yeah, so considering that, like how these are like unenforceable and like it's not adding a whole lot of stuff new, and the president and the secretary can just submit new policy books, I think my recommendation, I'm not going to get fully behind it because it's not entirely related to my job, but just like if I were a constituent, suggesting what my senators do, maybe vote them down and try to get a new one, because this is a whole bunch of stuff in here.
All right, further discussion on policy book as a whole. Grace? Okay.
Second.
Discussion on the motion. Seeing no discussion, we'll move straight to vote. Or I'm sorry, we'll move to vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion to table the discussion and move to vote on the whole policy book, say yay.
Yay.
All opposed, say nay. All right, the ayes have it, motion passes. Okay, we'll now vote on policy book 18-19-012, the presidential policy book. All those in favor say yay. All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
In the opinion of the chair, the nays have it, the policy book is defeated. Okay, now moving to the consideration.
18-19.
Policy book 18-19-013, the communications policy book. Seeing that sponsor is in here, we'll go ahead and move straight to discussion on the policy book as a whole. Okay, discussion on policy book 18-19-013. Katie?
Yeah, so CATA also reviewed this policy book. It included some stuff from the governing documents and non-documents. There's a section towards the bottom that's like guidelines for procedure to follow, with like who to reach out to and gain access to certain things and things like that. And so in the same spirit of what we were talking about with the presidential policy book, I think this should go back to James for the better fulfilling, again, like what a policy book is supposed to be doing, but also needs to be applicable to administration beyond.
Further discussion, Curtis?
I wouldn't mind voting this communications policy down. What are some recommendations from CATA, from you, about improvements to the policy book?
Well, yeah, like I was just saying, I think there's, from what I remember about like reformatting it. I haven't glanced at it in a little bit. So, so the beginning part, like Article 1, is basically directly from the governing documents. And so kind of what I was saying about the presidential policy book, that doesn't really add anything to the, like what the communications policy of the Secretary of Cabinet should be. Kind of just lays out the role of Secretary itself. And then Article 2, the communications guidelines. There is some useful information in there, but like Brian was saying before, there's specific language for this academic year. And so it would pose problems in years to come, saying like there's specific people named, there's specific dates that aren't, it's not like when people take office after this day, it's like, for example, okay, so Article 2, Section 4, email blasts towards the middle. I will make an exception for the month of September 2019, and that's like specifically September 2019, so that kind of causes problems down the line in the future.
Just a question for Brian. I know Bobby chimed in and said, oh, this policy book, it can be, I guess transferable from year to year. Is that true?
Transferable in the fact that like it remains in effect for years?
Yes. So for example, if we don't pass this policy, this 1819-013 policy book, that I guess the previous communications policy book will remain in effect.
There is no previous communications policy book. This is a new one. So I'm gonna jump on that. There's no, like the case, presidential communications, finance budget, there's a bunch of those that never existed and now do exist, as mandated by the bylaws. I'm gonna try and not reopen this wound, but it's gonna happen a little bit. J-Board issued a couple decisions related to the policy books. What happened before was that the maintaining official of the policy books had to submit the policy book to Senate, not just the first one, but every time we want to be amended, the maintaining official had to do it. J-Board got rid of that, so that didn't work retroactively. The ones, they'd already been submitted, so those people who had submitted them as the maintaining official, that was fine. But after this, so like now that you just voted on the presidential policy book, Angela can't propose a presidential policy book.
Can I
That's,
ask a question to the parliamentarian?
go for it.
Yeah, I thought you said, you just struck out the part where it said that only the maintaining officials could amend them, and meaning that like the Senate could initiate amendments on them.
So there's
Are you
nothing.
saying, hold
Go
up, are you saying that like from now on, you as the judicial board chair cannot introduce a judicial register?
So based on my reading of the bylaws, I'm welcome to hear other opinions about anything. Based on my reading of the bylaws, there's nothing in there now that says that the maintaining officials can propose the policy books. And so because there's nothing in the bylaws about that, it would go down the ladder of what the governing documents say, and the rules of debate decorum is the only thing after that that says, again, I'm welcome to disagreements, I don't read these all day long, I kind of do, but I'm that only members of the Senate can propose legislation. So with that, in my current thinking, the presidential policy book, any of the policy books that were assigned to people outside of the Senate cannot be submitted now by those maintaining officials. So yeah, stuff like that.
Further discussion, Katie?
So just to clarify that one, if it's like presidential policy book, we voted down, it would go back to Angela, she would rewrite, and then the senator introduce it.
Mm-hmm. So Angela can't propose anything anymore. So if you're not in the Senate, you can't propose anything.
Okay,
Even if you're a maintaining official of it, it doesn't say that maintaining officials can propose the legislation. So now that that policy book's gone, it will be incumbent on somebody in here to propose it. I realized that was a sticky part of what we decided, but ultimately it's what J-Board unanimously agreed to. So yeah, so like if you go down the communications one, someone in here is going to have, just like they did last time with all the other, or with a lot of the other policies. So.
I have a clarifying question for Brian. Would that be similarly like how Parker, like, if I was to write my policy book and have like Parker as a sitting senator propose it, is that the way that they can still get it proposed to the Senate?
Yeah, so before J-Board got involved in this, I believe you were the maintaining official of the program policy board.
Yeah.
And under the other wording was that you had to propose it, the initial one. And so the thing about the maintaining official proposing the initial one, that was in the bill that proposed the new bylaws. It wasn't in the bylaws, but the bylaws said that only you guys can submit new policy books for amendments. That's gone now. So like now that you passed the programming book, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So like now you can't go and propose a programming book. Someone else in Senate would have to.
Yeah, one more question for Brian. If I remember your decision correctly, the logic of the judicial board was that, like, the problem with the provision you struck down is that it restricted the Senate's ability to initiate amendments. Is it also like the essential ruling of the judicial board that it is against the rules for like a maintaining official to propose anything like we've always done with the elections policy book in the judicial register? Or is that just like a consequence of you guys taking out the text?
I believe somewhere in that opinion, it says, it brings into the logic of what the rules of inform saying about like members can't, people outside of the Senate can't propose legislation. So we kind of use that through the logic thing. But yes, I don't remember if we explicitly said it, but a consequence of getting rid of that provision that said maintaining officials can propose amendments to the policy book, and they were the only ones who could do that, opened up the doors for not just the amendments to happen, but because they can't propose it at all, someone else has to write the policy.
Yeah, one follow-up, because we've always done this with the elections policy book and the judicial register, and it was the intention of the Senate to extend that to other areas of policy. Could the Senate put back in the bylaws that maintaining officials can propose amendments if they don't restrict the ability of the Senate to also propose amendments? Because that's how it's always been done, and that system worked well, and that's what the Senate wanted to do.
So yeah, I think the essential problem is here was that the problem was that the wording was that the maintaining official was the only one who could submit the amendment.
So if they're not the only one, can the Senate put that back?
I really can't comment on that because there's no wording I can rule on. In principle, I think so, but again, I'm not going to say anything definitive. I would have to, if you want to discuss that more with me, or if that comes up in something, we can have that discussion. But I would need to see like wording of it.
Mr. Speaker, in the interest of time, our 25 live request for this room ended at 5 o'clock. And there was another meeting scheduled on 25 live for 5 o'clock. And I think that student organizations waiting outside. I moved to vote on this policy.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second discussion? Seeing none? Oh, yeah.
Just a question, and just kind of back to what we were talking about, like, is there a way, how did the executives propose the policy book in the first place for us to vote on, and then if we were to vote back down, would that seem principle?
So that was because under the old bylaws, that was allowed. And because it was required by the bill that passed the bylaws that said all the maintaining officials needed to get the proposed policy book up by the first meeting of the Undergraduate Senate. So that's when these things were first put up, and we're at the end of October now. So that is what happened, was that the old bylaws before, not the old bylaws, but the bylaws before J-Board issued rulings, allowed that. So that's why.
All right, any further discussion? Kate?
I can't open a motion, but, yeah, okay. So I would recommend that if possible, we table this until next week, and then we can work on amending it at our meeting next week, so that we don't have to vote again and one of us come up with a brand new policy book to write. But we also don't pass a policy book that's not going to be able to be.
Yeah, so we would have to vote on this motion first.
Yeah, that was like a.
Okay.
So parliamentary inquiry for you, Sean, if the Senate votes down this motion to move to vote, they can then make a motion to table, right?
Yes, because then we just move back into discussion. Move on.
I have a great question. What's the difference between striking down the presidential policy book and then not striking down this? Either or both policy books need to be Like, did you strike down the presidential one?
Yeah,
or
we
did you table it?
No, it was voted down completely.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, like, what's the difference with this policy book?
There's no difference other than the language, so like addressing two separate things, but in terms of striking it down, it would be the same mechanism.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Could I answer that?
Sure.
So, at least for me, I wasn't aware until after we voted down the presidential policy book that Angela would be able to reintroduce it.
Yeah.
So that's my only concern is like, I don't want to do that twice the second time knowing what the problem is. So.
Okay, further discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing no further discussion, we'll move to vote on the motion. All those in favor of closing discussion and moving to vote on the policy book as a whole, say yay. All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
All right, the nays have it, we're back into discussion.
I move to table this policy book until next.
Okay, is there a discussion? All right, seeing no discussion, we'll move to vote on the motion to table the policy book until next week's Senate meeting. All those in favor of closing discussion and moving to vote on tabling the policy book until next week's Senate meeting, say yay.
Yay.
All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it, motion passes. Now we'll move to vote on actually tabling the policy book. All those in favor of tabling the policy book until next week's meeting, say yay.
Yay.
All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it, the policy book is tabled. Now moving to public comment. Any member of the public wishing to speak? Seeing no public, we'll move to the good of the order. Any executives for the good of the order? Bobby?
Yeah, I will make this quick since we all want to get out, but this is one of my longstanding things, as many of you know, that I disagree with the judicial board's interpretation of their powers, that they can remove text, edit the text of our documents after they make decisions. And this is an example just now of the problem with that, because the judicial board made a ruling that the Senate is also allowed to initiate amendments to policy books. And just as a coincidental consequence of that, when they removed the text, because it all happened to be in one sentence, they also took out the ability of other officials to propose policy books. These are the kinds of things where the Senate should be making choices and not leave it up to the random consequences of whatever text the judicial board identifies. So that's my piece.
Any more executives for the good of the order? Seeing none, we'll move to Senate good of the order. Any senators for the good of the order? Curtis?
Yes, thank you, Mulan, for bringing out your directors. I really appreciate it and, representing their interests. It just shows how, the executive branch is willing to work things out with us. So thank you.
Any more senators for the good of the order?
Yeah, I just want to say, I know I was kind of against the bill that passed earlier about the separation. I really appreciated everyone's time and dedication to the debate about that. I still think if we're looking at a problem of needing more people involved, the bill's not the right solution, but we're kind of beyond that at this point. But that being said, I look forward to working with you guys and your two senators on maybe how we can reconcile that difference and what we can do.
Any more senators for the good of the order? Adam?
I don't want to speak to anyone else, but I will say that I did appreciate the involvement that Mulan had today and his representation of his branch of government. And I think that that's representative of the type of involvement that I would like to see from the executive in sessions of the Senate going forward. So thank you.
Any more senators as part of the
Yeah, this is just a personal thing. Wayne's sympathy card is here. If you haven't signed it, please do it. If any of you walked in late, Wayne's father died. So he's not here right now, but it would be nice to give him support.
Any more senators?
Oh, and then I think the e-board, and there's gonna be an AUSG, I guess, meet the AUSG leadership tomorrow, Mulan?
Yes, tomorrow, 6 p.m. MGC 245.
It's not right.
Let's
Look around for us.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if you look around for us, we'll be there.
Yeah. 247.
Yeah, 247, yeah.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. It will be here at the Panera.
Yes. I made sure that.
Any more senators for the good of the order? Jeremy?
I also want to thank you a lot for coming out and really like being vocal in it. I hope to work with you in my new role.
I'll just let them get.
Any more senators with the order? All right, seeing none. So thank you, everyone. I know this was a very long, drawn-out meeting, but I appreciate your commitment, and I'm sure that the student body appreciates your commitment as well. So thank you. Since we're in a tradition, move on. Thank you. And then please continue your office hours. We'll send out a doodle poll with that. I'll be sure to get you the briefing this week. Sorry, this past week was midterms week, so just excuse me on that. And then if there are any questions, please feel free to reach out. Jeremy and then Adam and Grace, if you want to see me outside since a new group's coming in, that would be great. Other than that, we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Smile for the camera.
Yes.
Parliamentarian nominee or someone?
Yes.
Okay, hi.